Chapter 3992. Ning Shu suspected that the grand uncle had been holding back when they were washing their hands and drinking water. It wasn't until the emperor jumped into the pool that the grand uncle couldn't tolerate it anymore. After all, Ning Shu and the others were just drinking water. It wasn't a big deal to wash their hands. Only then did Ning Shu realize that he had drunk his own hand-wash water. Ning Shu was speechless. He didn't directly kill the emperor because he wanted to destroy him mentally. He was being played in the palm of his hand without being able to fight back. How terrible was that feeling? How mentally broken was that? Moreover, the grand uncle was especially bad. He set up a barrier around the emperor's head and trapped his head inside. Even though his body passed through, his body couldn't break through the barrier and couldn't fuse together. His body desperately attacked the barrier, but it couldn't break through. What a pitiful man. It wasn't scary to have an enemy. The scariest thing was to know nothing about the enemy. If the emperor knew a little about the grand uncle, he definitely wouldn't have dared to jump in rashly. Ning Shu also said that he wanted to wash his feet, but in fact, he didn't dare to put his feet in. Besides, he still wanted to drink. He was such a proud child, but now he was in such a miserable state. The grand uncle said to Sang Liang, "Put away the spring." He was a little late and someone had jumped in. If it wasn't for the importance of this thing, the grand uncle wouldn't have wanted it. Thinking of this, he kicked the emperor's body away again. This time, he kicked it very far away. It turned into a star and disappeared. Ning Shu put his hand on his forehead and looked out. This time, he didn't know how long it would take for his body to crawl back. "I wish you well." Sang Liang stood up and opened the book in his hand. The pages of the book flipped. One of the pages left the book and flew above the spring, collecting the spring water. It was clean as if there had never been spring water. The pages of the book returned to the book. Sang Liang closed the book and easily collected the spring. Ning Shu looked at the book in Sang Liang's hand. Until now, she still hadn't understood Sang Liang's book. She felt that this book was like a treasure chest that could do anything. There were too many uses and too many functions. Sang Liang never left his side. It seemed like this was a huge treasure. He wanted to see it, touch it, and own it. Ning Shu stared fixedly at Sang Liang's book. The surface of the book seemed to be a low-key and dark craft paper. It was faint and gave off a heavy feeling of history. She hadn't personally experienced Sang Liang's combat strength, so she didn't know how strong he was. He seemed to be a functional support character. However, Ning Shu did not believe that Sang Liang did not have the strength. Otherwise, Sang Liang would not have been able to control so many people. Moreover, the organization did not only have mission enforcers, but also some void creatures. Without strength, Sang Liang would definitely not be able to suppress them. The Taishu's strength was unfathomable, and Sang Liang had never made a move. He was too mysterious, and no one knew his strength. Ning Shu was eager to fight with Sang Liang. Firstly, he wanted to test Sang Liang's strength. Secondly, he really wanted to fight Sang Liang for a long time. Her meridians had already reached her elbows. There was some energy stored in them, enough for a lot of use. Fatian saw Ning Shu's abnormal expression from the corner of his eye. He immediately asked, "What are you doing?" Ning Shu stared at Sang Liang's hand. "I like the book in his hand. I want to borrow it to take a look." Fatian's black face was filled with question marks. "What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Wake up." When Sang Liang heard Ning Shu's words, he also looked over and stared at Ning Shu. His expression was still as calm and noble as ever, like a noble from the middle world. He sat high up and looked at the slaves and beasts in the Colosseum. That kind of nobility and indifference. Ning Shu grinned and smiled innocently. "Grandpa, can you let me take a look at your book?" Sang Liang narrowed his eyes and actually handed the book to Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't expect Sang Liang to lend the book to him. She was just blindly talking nonsense. Ning Shu liked to talk nonsense now. She especially liked to blabber on and on. When she spoke, she felt very happy. Now that Sang Liang really handed the book over, Ning Shu didn't dare to take it. He was afraid that Sang Liang had some kind of scheme. Sang Liang opened his hand and the craft book Ning Shu floated over. One of the pages seemed to want to break away from the book and fly out alone. Such a familiar scene. Wasn't it the scene when the pages of the book were collected into the spring? Ning Shu immediately took a few steps back. He suddenly understood why Sang Liang wanted to give the book to him. She was afraid that if he wanted to store her up, he would store himself up like a spring. Previously, when he went to find Shan Yu, Sang Liang brought a group of people to surround him. This old man was very evil. Fatian stood in front of Ning Shu. He clearly understood Sang Liang's plan. Ning Shu raised his hand and struck the book. This kind of power even made the Divine Stone clan, who were known for their defense, feel pain. He didn't know what kind of damage would be done to the book if he hit it. A force broke through his knuckles and flew towards the book at a speed visible to the naked eye. The moment the two sides came into contact, there was a clang sound. A huge sound wave spread out. The book was shaken and the pages of the book flipped violently. It was as if the book had lost control. However, on the surface, it didn't cause any damage to the book. The book's defense was also quite terrifying. Sang Liang's face froze. He reached out and grabbed the book that had lost control. He forced the book to close, but the book was still trembling slightly. Sang Liang's face became a little ugly. He stared at Ning Shu and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" Ning Shu had a terrified look on his face. He pursed his lips and said pitifully, "That book suddenly flew over. I thought that you were going to put me in the book and I wouldn't be able to come out. I was so scared." Sang Liang carelessly touched his book and looked at Ning Shu with an inexplicable expression. Ning Shu seemed to have come back to his senses. He looked at Sang Liang warily. "Are you thinking of locking me up? You're so naughty." "I say, why do you want to give me the book? I sincerely want to see your book, but you have such a dirty mind. Aren't you ashamed? Do you feel pain for the darkness in your heart? Are you ashamed? Your heart yearns for the light. That's right. However, you have to be open and aboveboard." Sang Liang didn't say anything. Instead, he put away the trembling book and didn't say a word. However, Ning Shu felt that the little book in Sang Liang's conscience was holding a grudge and had recorded it down heavily. In any case, Ning Shu was now a troublemaker. A dead pig wasn't afraid of boiling water. He had offended them many times before. One or two more wouldn't make a difference. Ning Shu had a new assessment of the power in his meridians. It seemed that the power wasn't weak. The only difficult thing was that he had to gather enough power of faith from the world to reconstruct his meridians. Chapter 3993. They were also afraid that this demon would trick them and take pleasure in teasing them. Don't think that they didn't see her sparkling eyes. When she looked at them, that kind of interest made their scalps tingle. Ning Shu really just wanted to touch such a cute race. It was purely out of love. But in the heart of the flower fairies, she was a pervert, a demon. In response to the flower fairies' worries, Ning Shu explained, "No, I will explain the traps and formations inside clearly to you so that you won't get lost in the fog." As partners, of course he had to explain things clearly to them. He wouldn't bully a group of little kids. Void creatures rarely used formations. They used their race's advantage and didn't rely on external objects like formations. The things that the intelligent humans in the small world researched might not be good enough, but they might not be able to come into contact with them. The flower fairies stammered, "Okay, we agree." They were in a weak position now. The situation forced them to compromise with the demon. But in their hearts, they were condemned. Was it really good to make a deal with a demon and a demon like this? Would they sink into depravity? Was it really good to drink poison to quench thirst? The flower fairies dejectedly asked Ning Shu, "How much companion energy do you want?" Ning Shu, "It's not much." She looked at Fatian. Fatian said a number. Hearing this, the flower fairies were very anxious. But at least they had gathered enough. But they didn't immediately give it to Ning Shu. Instead, they said, "Finish your work first, then I will give you these things." Ning Shu said slowly, "Give me a deposit first. Without the deposit, I won't start work." The flower fairies were about to explode from anger at Ning Shu. Treacherous demon. But after giving a bit of companion energy, Ning Shu said to Fatian, "Eat it. Then I will set up the traps." Fatian agreed and ate all of the accompanying energy right in front of the flower fairies. The crunching sounds of chewing caused their faces to twitch and their hearts to ache. Ning Shu didn't stay any longer and started to set up the array formation. He had learned about array formations in his previous small world. Everything originated from the same source. The accompanying energy had helped Fation solve the problem in his heart, and since the accompanying energy was provided by the flower sprite, it was only natural that this place would be as sturdy as an iron bucket. If they encountered an invincible enemy, it would provide them with a chance to escape. Moreover, the flower fairies were so cute. Fation ate the accompanying energy and knew that he would be itching for a long time. He politely asked the flower fairy, "Can you give me a room?" Although the flower fairies didn't look worried, they still gave Fation a flower. The petals of the flower could be closed, so no one knew what was going on inside. Moreover, the flower elves also had their own plans. With a hostage in their hands, they were not afraid of any devils causing trouble. After being trapped in the flower, it won't be easy to escape. Fation already felt itchy, but he was very happy in his heart, because this meant that his foot was going to be reborn. No words could describe the joy in his heart. He knew that his leg was very precious to him, but only when he lost it would he know how precious it was. Ning Shu was busy outside. The thick fog stuck to her body, but she was very motivated. Maybe if she succeeded here, the mountain's foot would be reborn. With hope in her heart, Ning Shu busied herself. She tried her best to set up this place as sturdy as possible, using all of her skills. After Ning Shu's work, the white fog couldn't be seen from the outside, but danger lurked everywhere inside. Even if it was a void creature, it would be very uncomfortable inside. There were many traps and illusions, which annoyed him to no end. One trap after another, which made him impatient and impatient. Once one's mentality collapsed, it would be easier for something to happen. Ning Shu came out of the fog and asked the cute flower fairies, "Where's my companion?" A flower fairy pointed at the flower bud high up and said, "He's in the flower bud." Ning Shu guessed that Fation might be rolling on the ground from the itch, so he didn't go. Fation also had a strong self-esteem. Thus, Ning Shu began to tease the flower fairies. "It's done. Do you want to go in and try?" The flower fairies looked at each other. "Of course we have to try. Otherwise, how would we know what you're doing?" Ning Shu nodded and looked at them with a smile. "Go in. It's very fun inside." The flower fairies could more or less see Ning Shu's bad temper. Especially when they saw her bewitching them to go in, they felt that there was something inside that made them speechless. But if they didn't go in, they didn't know how strong this thing's defense was. For a moment, they hesitated whether to go in or not. The flower fairies looked at Ning Shu's smiling face and felt that she was just looking at them. Thus they said, "We'll all go in. I don't believe that it can do anything to us." The flower fairies entered the fog hand in hand. Ning Shu took out a fruit and ate it while listening to the ghostly wails and howls in the fog. She felt that it was very appetizing. Even the fruit tasted a lot better. "What is this thing? It's so scary. Help, I fell into a deep pit. Wah, there's something disgusting in there." The wails and cries for help came one after another. It was very pleasant to hear. In the beginning, the flower fairies refused to ask Ning Shu for help. But in the end, they couldn't hold on anymore. Many of their people were injured, and some were even on the verge of death. The flower fairies didn't dare to be brave anymore. They wailed to Ning Shu for help. "Let us out, let us out." Ning Shu threw away the fruit core in his hand. He changed the array so that the people inside could come out. The flower fairies flew out. Their bodies were dirty. Some of the flower fairies' wings were broken. They supported each other. Their faces were filled with fear. When they looked at Ning Shu, it was as if they were looking at a pervert. "Ning Shu? Why are you looking at me like that? I helped you strengthen the barrier." The flower fairies were in low spirits. It was obvious that they were overly frightened. They hurriedly drank some nectar to calm themselves down. Ning Shu and the others asked, "How does it feel?" "It's okay. The accompanying energy wasn't spent in vain, right?" The flower fairies couldn't be bothered with Ning Shu. They comforted each other. Some of the more timid ones were still sobbing. The other flower fairies were comforting them. From time to time, They would turn their heads and look at Ning Shu as if they were looking at a pervert. Their eyes were filled with fear and a trace of fear. Ning Shu? Are these children's minds a little weak? They fell sick just like that. Also, those were just normal traps and arrays. The array was an illusion array. Chapter 3994. The hallucination array was only used to confuse people and make them immerse themselves in an illusion. The target of the attack was their mind. As long as they had intelligence and emotions, they would have weaknesses and fears. Actually, even if they knew that this was an illusion, it would not have much attack power. The goal was to catch them off guard and attack their mind without them being mentally prepared. But if they knew that this was fake, it would not be that powerful. Ning Shu said, "Didn't I already warn you? Why are you still in such a sorry state?" The flower elves, after taking a stroll inside and seeing everything, their hearts became sinister. There were endless traps inside. Just as they came out of one trap, they fell into another. What kind of people were they to make him so annoyed and irritated? Their hearts would explode at any moment. Ning Shu asked again, "Are you satisfied with this? If not, I can change it. I'm a very professional person." The flower elves' faces turned ashen. No need. This is already very good." Ning Shu made an sound. "Then our deal is over. Take away the deposit and give me the remaining energy." The flower fairy was bashful and hesitant, but in the end, she still gave the associated energy to Ning Shu. She couldn't say whether she was happy or not. For the flower elves, losing some of the energy would make their maturation period longer. There would not be enough energy for them to grow quickly. But the safety of their race was very important. If they were discovered, they would not even have the chance to grow. There was no other way. The weak could only be bullied. Then Ning Shu taught the flower elves how to change the array and the location of the traps. If the flower elves wanted to leave the canyon, they could change the array so that they would not be trapped inside. Since it was related to their race and their lives, the flower elves slightly lowered their rejection of Ning Shu. They listened to Ning Shu and experimented with it. Soon, the flower elves grasped how to change the array, but they could not set it up themselves. It was like knowing how to drive a car but not how to build one. Ning Shu said with a smile, "You guys are really smart. I like you guys more and more." At this moment, the flower elves asked Ning Shu warily, "How did you find us?" Ning Shu laughed. "Of course I have my ways." She threatened, "No matter where you run to, I will find you. You can't escape." The flower elves hugged each other and trembled, their faces filled with despair and fear. "Why are you doing this to us?" Ning Shu said, "I like you guys. Why don't you go out with me? I don't need all of you, just one of you is enough." Whenever he looked at such a cute race, he would feel really happy. It was such a pity that they were so eye-catching. Otherwise, when she went back, she would see Jinji. She didn't really want to talk about him. No. The flower elves madly shook their heads in refusal. In their eyes, the devil wanted them to sacrifice one of their people to help the rest of their race. However, this was an extremely painful matter. The flower elves' eyes were filled with tears as they mustered their courage to reject the devil's cruel suggestion. "No, we will definitely not follow you." It was impossible for them to take their people with them. If they were going to die, they would die together. Ning Shu casually said, "If you don't want to, then forget it." She didn't expect to trick one of them. What if she did? If she didn't trick them, she wouldn't be disappointed or lose anything. However, she only asked why the flower elves were so scared. Facing her, none of the flower elves had a good expression. If their faces weren't black, their faces were red, and their faces were twisted as they trembled. No matter how beautiful you are, you can't ruin your looks like this. The flower elves. The flower bud that Ifigon was in was shaking violently, and the entire flower was shaking. Ning Shu frowned and didn't disturb Fation. That thing was very itchy after eating it. He was probably rolling around inside right now. However, the flower elves were scared out of their wits. Looking at the shaking flower bud, Ning Shu suppressed the fear in her heart and asked, "What happened?" Ning Shu casually said, "It's fine." The flower elves' eyes were filled with suspicion. Such a large flower path was about to be broken. Was there really no problem? She wasn't worried about the people inside, but they were worried about their own flower house. Ning Shu looked at the large plants and flowers and changed the topic, asking them, "These flowers and plants were all planted by you guys?" The flower elves puffed out their chests and flapped their transparent wings. "Of course they were planted by us. They had worked hard to build their clan's land." Ning Shu praised, "Very beautiful." The flower elves immediately became vigilant. Could it be that he had taken a fancy to their flowers? Growing these things also consumed some of their energy. If they were taken away, they would be sad. How could there be such a demon who wanted to steal people and their house? They tried their best to change the topic. "How did you find us?" They wanted to get rid of this demon. Ning Shu said, "If I tell you the method, it's not a method. I won't tell you." The flower elves. Ning Shu took out a fruit and nibbled on it. There was something sticky on the ground that looked like nectar. Ning Shu put some in his mouth. It was very sweet. This nectar was the flower elves' attack method. If one was touched by it, they would sink into the sticky nectar and be unable to break free. It was like glue. Ning Shu thought about what Fodder liked to eat, so he put away some of the clean nectar. Although it didn't have as much energy as the life spirit, it had a special floral fragrance. It was sweet and fragrant. It was the best thing to use to sweeten the mouth. And he also made some good food for Jinji. People had to have goals. Eating to your heart's content was not a life goal. Eating all the good food in the world was the most noble goal. Let Jinji eat some good food to improve her taste. She wouldn't stuff everything into her mouth like a hungry ghost. When the flower elves saw Ning Shu's actions, their faces couldn't help but twitch. What kind of person was this? Ning Shu collected a lot of nectar. These things could be used to pay for the fish's medical expenses. It was so expensive to see a doctor in the void. Seeing a doctor was difficult and expensive. The void was so big, but he was still so poor. After spending time with the flower elves and seeing their beautiful and exquisite appearance every day, his mood couldn't be better. The flower bud that Fodder was in slowly bloomed. The petals slowly bloomed one by one. It was indescribably beautiful and fragrant. Fodder came out from inside. He was full of energy and didn't look like he had been tortured inside at all. Ning Shu looked at his feet and smiled. Fodder's feet had grown out. Fodder laughed happily. Ning Shu smiled and said, "That's great." Ning Shu said, "Then let's go back." Chapter 3995. Ning Shu and Fodder looked at each other and smiled. There were tears in Fodder's eyes. He raised his head slightly and lowered it again, but there were no tears. His eyes were very bright, as if they had been washed. He smiled at Ning Shu. That smile was very pure, and there was only pure joy in it. He nodded. "Let's go back." Hearing that they were leaving, the flower fairy's eyes immediately lit up. Their little faces suddenly lit up, and they were more polite to Ning Shu and Fodder than ever before. "When are you leaving?" the flower fairies asked. "What's wrong?" Ning Shu smiled and asked, "Do you want to prepare a parting gift for us? You don't have to be so polite, really." The flower fairies were dumbfounded. There was actually such a shameless person in the world. He ate and took, and now he wanted a parting gift. You think you're here as a guest? You don't know your place at all. In order to send Ning Shu off, the flower fairies could only suppress their anger and prepare a parting gift for Ning Shu. Ning Shu smiled and received a bouquet of beautiful flowers, as well as some nectar with a special flavor. Ning Shu was a little embarrassed. "I didn't think that you would like me so much. Do you want to go out and play with me and see the outside world?" No, you demon, who would like you? There was so much to complain about. Ning Shu accepted the gift and left the canyon with Fodder. She was not reserved at all. She squatted down and pinched Fodder's foot. It was warm and chubby. She said with a choked voice, "It really grew out." Fodder, "Yeah, it grew out." Ning Shu patted Fodder's back. "Don't hurt yourself so easily in the future. It's not easy to find accompanying energy, and it might not work the next time you eat it." Feeling a sense of security, Fodder cherished this moment too much. No matter what, he would not easily give up his body. There was nothing more precious than his own body. After resolving the matter on their minds, they chatted as they hurried on their way. Ning Shu said, "After this, I might not be able to walk in the void anymore. I want to solve the problem of my body." His meridians were reconstructed. Fortunately, there was some energy stored in his wrist so he could use it twice. Fortunately, he had some confidence now, so he didn't feel so flustered when he entered the small world. Fation nodded. "That's right. Once we've dealt with your body, we can make a trip back." "Let's go back and meet some people," Hitian said. Ning Shu had been trying to avoid this matter. After a moment of silence, he said, "I'm afraid that when we return, some people will already be gone. Perhaps even some worlds would no longer exist." She had been asleep for a very long time, and it would take even longer to reconstruct her meridians. It was hard to say whether or not she would be able to see the people from the past again. For an ordinary child like Yao Nyang, even if she cultivated, it would be able to slow down the aging of her body. But after such a long time, Ning Shu felt that if she went back, she might not be able to see them again. She also didn't know how the earthworm was doing. There was even a possibility that the entire Nine Palace Mountain was no more. Before she died, something happened to Nine Palace Mountain, and it was repaired with star stones. This kind of repair didn't take long. She wondered if the little demon knew how to repair it. "Oh, I forgot." Ning Shu patted her head. Nine Palace Mountain was no longer in the world of reincarnation. Nine Palace Mountain was repelled by the world of reincarnation. Later, it was moved to a living world of the World Tree. And everything on her body was destroyed. In other words, Nine Palace Mountain and the World Tree were both destroyed. Nine Palace Mountain and the World Tree no longer existed. The world no longer existed, so the Nine Palace Mountain placed inside would also be destroyed. If Nine Palace Mountain was destroyed, then the living beings living inside would also be destroyed. Yao Nyang, the earthworm, in fact, couldn't be seen anymore. They were no longer here. This, Ning Shu was suddenly stunned. She had always thought that they might have died of old age. She didn't expect that they would be destroyed with her. Her facial muscles twitched. Ning Shu said with a trembling voice, "You can't see them anymore. They were destroyed with the World Tree." Fation was silent for a while. He didn't say anything. He hesitantly reached out and patted Ning Shu's shoulder. Unforeseen circumstances were unpredictable, and people were unpredictable. People really didn't know when they would disappear and how they would be annihilated. Moreover, the souls of the living beings inside couldn't enter the world of reincarnation. Under such power, their fragile souls would probably be destroyed. Ning Shu felt that she shouldn't get involved with too many people. For example, if she died, those small worlds in the peerless martial arts would also be damaged. But that wasn't certain. Maybe if she died, it wouldn't affect the peerless martial arts. Instead, there would be one less person to absorb the energy of the peerless martial arts. The saddest thing in the world was, "I thought we needed each other, but you didn't care about me." Ning Shu sighed. This was probably a fight between immortals and mortals. Because they were weak, they couldn't control their own fate. Just like the living beings in the World Tree, like herself, they were crushed to death with one hand. And they couldn't see those people anymore. The little mouse died not long after being resurrected by Fation. This time, it was completely destroyed. He couldn't be resurrected again. He couldn't see Li Wen again, although he didn't seem to remember who Li Wen was. She had to be strong. Only then could she walk freely in the void and not be afraid of any danger. Only when she was strong could she do anything she wanted. Only when she was strong could she be fearless. Ning Shu asked Yvonne, "What are you going to do next?" Her legs had grown out. She didn't need to find something to recover them. Fion said, "You found the way to be strong. I also need to find the way to be strong. We can't spend time together all the time." It was meaningless. Ning Shu nodded. Yes. She didn't agree either. She couldn't let Fation follow her to the small world. Moreover, it wasn't easy to enter. It was meaningless to go in. Ning Shu asked, "Where do you plan to go?" Fation shook his head. "I don't know. Anyway, I'll go wherever I need to go." Opportunities can't be obtained by staying at home. The most important thing is to find energy. He had to be strong as soon as possible. Ning Shu nodded. Take Jinji with you. I'm going to the small world. I can't take Jinji with me. It's better if you take him. Mountain can't take him. Mountain seemed to be really afraid of Jinji. He probably couldn't control Jinji. But if he threw Jinji away, he probably wouldn't leave. He would rely on Mountain and the Divine Stone Clan and stare at them with death. This was a more troublesome matter. Fation thought about it and felt that it was better to take Jinji with him. Chapter 3996. Genius. 1 second. The two were clearly separated and did not interfere with each other, Jinji eating while the Origin King treated his wounds. Ning Shu walked over and said to Jinji, "Come with me." Jinji was a little confused, but still followed behind Ning Shu. Void also followed, and Ning Shu asked, "How are we going to get out of here? You haven't even been to this place, yet you want to go somewhere else. Do you know the situation around here?" Void fell silent. "Do you know that there are many swamps around here that are very dangerous?" The Origin King was silent. Ning Shu continued, "And there is also the Underworld River here. If you touch the Underworld River's water, you will be corroded. If you don't know anything, you may jump in to take a bath." Ning Shu said, frowning and looking at the Origin King with a condemning look, "It's been so long, yet you haven't walked around?" The Origin King became even more silent. "You haven't even explored this place, yet you want to go through the void and expect me to be your guide. If I have the intention of taking you to a dangerous place, you won't even know." Ning Shu clicked his tongue twice, completely ignoring his responsibilities and instead blaming the Origin King, leaving the Origin King speechless. His face was dark. He clearly felt that something was wrong, but he could not find the face to refute it. It seemed very reasonable, but there was definitely something wrong. In any case, the Origin King felt that something was wrong, so he could only change the subject and ask, "Where are you going?" Ning Shu was too lazy to be entangled in the matter of being a guide and said, "I want to build a house." "A house? Build one for me too," the Origin King said matter-of-factly. Ning Shu shook his head. "Impossible, I'm only responsible for being your guide. I never said I would build a house for you. If you want to live in a house, do it yourself." The Origin King paused and asked, I don't know how to build a house." He felt so guilty, so lacking in confidence. Ning Shu said, "Even if you don't know how to, you should help. Do what I tell you to do. If you don't help, it's impossible to live in a house." The Origin King became even less confident. All right. Ning Shu led the two of them into the forest. Ning Shu chose trees that were suitable for building houses. Then he pointed at a tree and said to Jinji, "Go and gnaw on this tree. Gnaw it off." Jinji's black face was filled with question marks. Even the Origin King was a little confused. Ning Shu said, "You have good teeth, so make the best use of them." It sounded like a compliment, but why did it feel so strange? Jinji had no choice but to start chewing on the tree. Wood chips flew everywhere. Damn. The Origin King felt his cheeks hurt and his teeth hurt even more. One tree after another fell. Ning Shu picked up a tree and saw that the Origin King was still standing motionless. She raised her eyebrows and said, "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and carry this." Origin King's body paused for a moment, but under Ning Shu's gaze, he squatted down and carried the entire tree on his shoulders. Looking at it this way, what Void King? He was just a fallen emperor. The next step was to start building a house. The house was simple enough to shelter from the wind and rain. Ning Shu ordered Jinji and the Origin King around. Gradually, the embryonic form of a house was formed. The next step was to cover it with straw to shelter from the rain. The next step was to make a bed and a place to sleep. Taking a break from the busy work, Jinji quickly stuffed something into his mouth. The Origin King was so tired that he almost died. Seeing Ning Shu's small mouth, he didn't want to hear any words coming out of it. After a long time, the house was finally built. There was also a place to sleep. Well, there was no quilt or anything like that. Where was he going to find something like that? Ning Shu thought about it and found something valuable on him. His consciousness entered the peerless martial art and entered a small world. The small world he chose was actually an ancient world. This made Ning Shu a little disappointed. From the outside, all small worlds looked the same. He couldn't see the situation inside. He also wanted to have a spring mattress, all kinds of comfortable pillows, and beautiful and fragrant sheets. In ancient times, these things couldn't be bought. Even if there were comfortable things, they were used by nobles. The jade she had couldn't buy many things. Should he find a place to exchange the jade for the currency of this world? Ning Shu looked around. It was all mountains and forests. There was no sign of people. He would definitely have to go to a big city to exchange for something useful and beautiful. Since ancient times, good things had a high price and cost money. Only the rich could enjoy them. Ning Shu followed a path. Right now, she was just a wisp of consciousness. Although consciousness looked no different from a physical body, it seemed that she couldn't use her power here. She was now a weak, helpless, and pitiful child. Ning Shu was walking when he vaguely heard the sound of gongs and drums. It sounded like a joyous occasion, but there was also a drawn-out Swana sound. It sounded like a whimper, giving this joy a sense of strangeness for no reason. The sound of gongs and drums got closer and closer. In the distance, there was a group of people holding a joyous occasion. The red sedan chair swayed. The people holding the joyous occasion were all wearing coarse linen clothes. There was no smile on their faces. Instead, there was an indescribable fear. It didn't seem like a joyous occasion. Although it wasn't as sad as a funeral, it didn't have the joyous atmosphere of a wedding either. Ning Shu looked at the group getting closer and closer. Through the simple red sedan chair, he saw the bride inside. She was wearing a simple red wedding dress, but her body was tied up with ropes. Her mouth was stuffed with a piece of cloth, so she couldn't make a sound. Was this a forced marriage? It was obvious that the bride wasn't willing. It was too rough to just tie her up to the sedan chair. The group was getting closer and closer. The atmosphere was solemn. Ning Shu, a white and tender child, suddenly appeared on the side of the road. It was strange. It made the group of people stare at Ning Shu. Ning Shu was also very surprised. According to her eyesight, there were only continuous mountains around. There was no village at all. Where was the family marrying their daughter to? They had to cross the mountains. It was estimated that even if it was dark, they wouldn't be able to cross these mountains. Probably because Ning Shu was too strange, a child appeared here. The group stopped. Ning Shu asked, "Which family's child are you?" Ning Shu rolled his eyes and cried, I don't know. When I woke up, I was in this place." The people in the wedding procession stared at Ning Shu. Their eyes were inexplicable. Looking at the numb and barren eyes made people feel very uncomfortable. This kind of sizing up made people feel very uncomfortable. It was as if they were not sizing up a person, but a pig and sheep to be slaughtered. They couldn't even be considered a living thing. They were just objects. Ning Shu was not in a hurry to buy a bed or a quilt. At this time, he was a little curious about the wedding procession. He was curious about where the bride would be sent to. The tied-up bride exuded an aura of despair. 11_11958/ Chapter 3997. Genius? 1 second. The slightly older man walking at the front stared at Ning Shu. He seemed to have some prestige, at least in this group of people. He seemed to be the leader. There was fear in the awe. Such a hunchbacked old man made some of the young and strong men timid and afraid. When the old man stared at Ning Shu, the others didn't even dare to speak. The old man stroked his beard. "I'm the village chief of Lotus Village." Ning Shu looked obedient as he shouted, "Hello, Grandpa Village Chief." The village chief asked again, "Kid, where's your family?" Ning Shu pinched the corner of his clothes and cried, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I can't find anyone to ask. I don't dare to ask." The village chief sized up Ning Shu for a while. Ning Shu seemed to be a little uneasy under his stare as he pinched the corner of his clothes tightly. "Grandpa Village Chief, can you take me home?" Ning Shu asked timidly. The village chief called out to a woman in the group. This woman's face was yellow and her skin was a little dark. She couldn't be considered beautiful at all. She had a wooden hairpin on her head. It was just a random branch. She had tea leaves stuck in her ears. She didn't have any jewelry on her body. It could be said that she was very poor. The woman stepped forward. The village chief said to her, "This child can't find his family. He's temporarily going to Lotus Village. Take care of this child first." The woman agreed and walked over to grab Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately took a step back. His expression changed drastically. "What are you doing? Are you going to touch me with such dirty hands?" "Everyone, what's going on?" She was just a pitiful little girl a moment ago. Now, her face suddenly changed. The village woman was also frightened by Ning Shu. The village chief glanced at the village woman, and she trembled again. The village chief said, "People from small places don't know the rules. Little girl, don't take offense." Although the village chief told Ning Shu not to take offense, his expression was somewhat ugly. As a child, Ning Shu naturally did not care about other people's expressions. "I just don't like dirty things. Why aren't you guys being particular about the wedding? You guys don't even wear clean clothes. That's too particular, tisk." Ning Shu's face made everyone want to beat her up. What kind of brat was this? He deserved to be thrown away. How could his family tolerate such a child? Perhaps they had deliberately thrown him away. Ning Shu asked, "Where are you going?" "Where is the bride in the sedan going?" "I want to go too. I want to go to the wedding banquet. Before I find my family, you have to take care of me. Once my family finds you, they will definitely reward you handsomely," Ning Shu said with a matter-of-fact expression. Everyone was speechless. Is it really okay for a child like you to boast like this? Ning Shu took out a jade pendant and shook it in front of everyone. "See this jade pendant? I have a lot of these things in my house, piles and piles. When I have nothing to do, I will throw the jade pendant into the water and listen to the sound." Inhumane flaunting of wealth. The villagers present were all stunned. This place was so barren that even food and clothing could not be taken care of. Such an inhumane behavior was simply challenging the hearts of people. Even if they only heard about it and did not see it with their own eyes, they still had a feeling of difficulty breathing. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the jade pendant in Ning Shu's hand. Their eyes followed the jade pendant. Ning Shu put away the jade pendant. Everyone's heart was filled with disappointment and uncontrollable greed. This was a good thing. If they had these things, wouldn't they be able to get rid of their barren and numb lives? Who didn't want to live a better life? The village chief saw that the topic had changed to an inexplicable place. He coughed and warned, "The most important thing right now is to get married. Lu Shi, you take this child back to Lotus Village." Ning Shu suddenly looked like he was pestering endlessly. "I also want to go. I plan to give this jade pendant to the bride as a gift." Everyone's breathing became heavy. Some of them stared at Ning Shu fervently. Ning Shu said to the bride in the simple sedan, "Come out, I will give you something." The village chief said, "You can't get out of the sedan in the middle of the wedding, and you can't lift the veil. It's very inauspicious. Therefore, you can give this to me. When the time comes, you can directly give it to the bride's in-laws." Ning Shu immediately put away the jade pendant. He raised his chin and said, "That won't do. I haven't even seen the bride's face. I like people thanking me in person." Ning Shu ran like a wisp of smoke to the front of the sedan. He lifted the curtain and saw the tied-up bride. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. The expressions of the young men in the group became serious, and their eyes emitted an ominous glint. Ning Shu asked curiously, "Why is she tied up? Is it a custom here?" The village chief followed Ning Shu's words. "It's a custom here. The husband's family wants to take the bride down a notch." Ning Shu thought, "Oh ho, his ability to lie through his teeth was good." Ning Shu stuffed the jade pendant into the bride's hand and put down the curtain. He waved his hand and said, "Seeing that you are so poor, there probably won't be anything good to eat at the wedding. I'm leaving. I don't want to stay in this poor village. I want to go home." The village chief immediately said, "It's getting dark now. It's not safe for you to walk in the mountains alone. Rest at Lu Shi's house and leave tomorrow." Ning Shu glanced at the cowering Lu Shi and nodded reservedly. If the house is not clean, I won't stay. The village chief said to Lu Shi, take her back and take good care of her. Lu Shi nodded submissively and didn't dare to pull Ning Shu back. She could only wait for Ning Shu to leave by himself. She followed behind Ning Shu. She glanced at the sedan chair, bit her lip, and finally steeled her heart and turned to leave. On the way, the bored Ning Shu asked, is this the wedding in the village? Lu Shi said in a low voice, that's my daughter. Ning Shu made a sound of surprise. Your daughter? Is it okay if you don't attend the wedding? Lu Shi lowered her head and said, it's okay. The child's father is here. Ning Shu snorted. Where is your village? I'm tired of walking. Ning Shu's expression was full of disdain. Lu Shi immediately said, soon, we'll be there soon. Lotus Village was a very poor village. There weren't many households. At this time, the sun was setting in the west and the sky was a sunset glow. The entire village was illuminated in orange. Ning Shu stood at the door of the courtyard and smelled the smell of chicken poop. He frowned. It's too dirty. Lu Shi said, I've been too busy recently, so I didn't have time to do it. Ning Shu clicked his tongue twice. It's so dirty. When your in-laws come to fetch the bride and see the courtyard full of chicken poop, they don't even know where to put their feet. Even if they sell pigs, they still have to look at the pigsty. Right, why didn't I see the in-laws come to fetch the bride? 11_11958/ Chapter 3998. Genius? Remember, 1 second. Ning Shu kept asking. Lu Shi was originally a weak woman who was not good with words. She was confused by Ning Shu's aggressive questions. She did not know how to answer. Ning Shu tiptoed to avoid the chicken feces and said, I'm hungry. I want to eat something. Lu Shi went to prepare food for Ning Shu, but the food was very simple and not well cooked. Ning Shu looked at the black bowl. There were large pieces of sweet potatoes in it. There was not even a grain of rice. Ning Shu poked the sweet potato with his chopsticks and smelled it. There was a slight sour smell. It was definitely not fresh. Ning Shu was conscious and did not need to eat. He threw the chopsticks away. This kind of thing is for pigs. I don't want to eat. Lu Shi was very embarrassed. There's nothing else to eat at home. Ning Shu curled his lips and asked again. Why is there no banquet for your family's wedding? It's too shabby. No matter how poor you are, you should at least have a banquet. The more I think about it, the more I feel that it's wrong. I don't even know if it's a wedding or a burial. Even a burial needs a banquet. Lu Shi trembled with fear. She said to Ning Shu, because we're too poor. There's nothing to show at home, so we might as well not have a banquet. Little girl, where is your home? When are you going to leave? Ning Shu said casually, I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't want to stay here at all. Lu Shi said, it's good to leave early. Lu Shi stared at Ning Shu's face. Seeing Ning Shu's white and tender baby fat, she could not help but mutter in her heart. Only the daughter of a rich family could be raised like this. She was raised to such an arrogant appearance. She did not know how she ended up here. But looking at the village chief and the others, Ning Shu asked, when will they come back? I don't know. It's a bit far away. I think I'll be back around midnight. Ning Shu said, you've married so far away. It's not easy for you to go back to your parents' home. Madame Lu could only repeat that there was nothing she could do about it. After that, Lu Shi stopped talking and stared in a direction in a daze. Ning Shu asked, other than your daughter, do you have any other children? Lu Shi shook her head. Ning Shu began to prattle on again. You only have one daughter, and you're willing to marry so far away. Lu Shi's eyes were filled with tears. She suppressed her grief and unconcealable fear and changed the topic. Little girl, are you tired? Do you want to rest? I don't want it. Your bed must be very dirty. Change the quilt for me again, Ning Shu said. Lu Shi was tortured by Ning Shu until she lost her temper. She changed the bedsheets, but there were big and small patches on the bedsheets. Ning Shu smelled it. There was no strange smell on the bedsheets, but there was an indescribable smell in the room. It was probably accumulated in the corners and damp from the rain. The smell in the room was not good. Lu Shi was about to leave the room when Ning Shu grabbed her clothes. Lu Shi turned around and asked submissively, "Little girl, what's wrong?" Ning Shu looked at Lu Shi and asked, "Is your daughter really getting married?" Lu Shi's expression was very flustered. Her eyes flickered as she avoided Ning Shu's gaze. Of course, she's getting married. This is our village's master. Don't be a busybody." Even if she said harsh words, Lu Shi's body was bent and her head was lowered. She was not a threat at all. Ning Shu snorted. "I can't be bothered." Lu Shi went out in a panic. After a while, she came back in to take a look. Seeing that Ning Shu was sleeping, she went out and locked the door. Ning Shu opened his eyes and looked at the roof. The wedding procession had not been dealt with yet. This bed was not comfortable at all. There was always an inexplicable damp smell. He really did not want to sleep. In the middle of the night, the wedding procession came back. It caused a commotion in the village. Dogs barked one after another. Lu Shi's husband came back. Lu Shi suppressed her sadness and looked at her husband. Her husband said, "Don't make such an expression when you go out. It's our daughter's fortune to be chosen." Lu Shi did not know if it was fortune or not. She only knew that she would never see her daughter again. Her husband asked again, "Did you find out where the girl is from today?" Lu Shi shook her head. "I don't know." She had always been the one talking. Listening to her speak was already frightening, not to mention trying to get information from her. After all, she was the child of a rich or noble family. She was clearly a child. Lu Shi said, "This child is definitely not simple. Let's send her away tomorrow." Lu Shi's husband was silent for a moment before saying, "We have to ask the village chief about this." Lu Shi sighed, followed by a suffocating silence. Suddenly, Lu Shi asked, "What about the jade?" Ning Shu's ears perked up. "That piece of jade is still with her." Ning Shu sneered in his heart. The jade was not with the bride. She had made a mark on it. Originally, she wanted to find the bride, but now the mark was not far away. This was a bit interesting. As the bride's parents, they did not take the jade. Even if her parents took it, it would give people the feeling that they were shameless. Not to mention that the village chief took it, and the bride's parents did not have any objections. To be precise, they were very respectful to the village chief. After the couple fell asleep and their breathing was steady and deep, Ning Shu went directly through the wall and out of the house, heading deep into the mountains. Ning Shu could only follow the route he took during the day. Using his spiritual energy, he found a deep pool. The bride, who was wearing a wedding dress, was now in a cage. It felt like a pig cage. The pig cage was not thrown directly into the pool. Instead, it was placed on the edge of the pool, waiting for the thing to come and feed. The bride in the cage was shivering. The cage seemed to have been used for a long time. There were mottled marks on it. It was unknown how many times it had been used. Ning Shu did not rescue the bride immediately. After all, he needed her as bait to see what kind of monster was hiding in the pool. The bride was so scared that she began to cry. Her desperate and helpless cries were especially terrifying and horrifying in this quiet forest. Although the bride was crying pitifully, Ning Shu did not do anything. Before he saw clearly what it was, more brides would come here. There were always some people who felt that they had to use some inexplicable method to kill others to express their sincerity. If you are so sincere, why don't you do it yourself? They were either virgins or young women. These people all had one thing in common, and that was that they were all weak and had no right to speak. Have you ever seen a young man sacrificed? 11_11958/ Chapter 3999. Ning Shu waited by the pool for a long time. The pool was calm, and nothing came out. That was strange. If there was nothing, why would the villagers sacrifice a big sister? Was it because she was around, so the thing in the pool didn't dare to come out? She was only a consciousness now. She didn't even have a physical body. She was formless and colorless. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be able to detect her presence. Mushroom cried for a long time in the cage. Perhaps she was tired, so she stopped crying. She wanted to open the cage, but her hands and feet were tied. She couldn't do it on her own. Ning Shu felt that even if there was nothing to eat mushroom cold, she would starve to death. He didn't want to let her live after bringing her here. If the matter wasn't resolved, even if Mushroom Cold was lucky enough to return to the village, she wouldn't have a place to stay. She would still be sent back. Ning Shu leaned against the rock. He wondered if he should change to another world. The high beds and soft pillows of the ancient times were still a little different from the modern ones. In the quiet forest at night, birds made strange chirping sounds, adding to the eeriness and terror of the night. Footsteps of something were slowly approaching the pool. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The sound of footsteps on the leaves became more and more obvious. Mushroom Cold in the cage also realized that danger was approaching. She held her breath, but her body honestly trembled. Ning Shu was speechless. It was clearly a spirit from the forest. Why was it placed by the pool? She thought that there was a monster in the water that wanted to eat her? Ning Shu looked at the thing in the darkness. It was a thing with black fur. It wasn't big, about the size of a 200 kilograms fat pig. He thought that it would be a bigger thing that was stained with human blood. The spirit energy in this world was still okay. Moreover, there were mountains all around. Ning Shu wasn't surprised at all that there were spirits in the forest. It was a big cat with black fur all over. It was the first time he had seen a cat that could grow so big. Ning Shu's gaze immediately focused on the big cat's fur. Such smooth fur. Wouldn't it be awesome if it was used to make a cool fur coat? If it really didn't work, it could be used as a mattress. He would only know if it was comfortable after using it. He wanted it. When the big cat got close to the cage, it suddenly felt its fur stand on end. It looked around vigilantly but didn't find anything else. However, its fur was standing on end, making it feel dangerous. It quickly went to the side of the cage, opened the cage very skillfully, and dragged Mushroom out of the cage. The little girl was scared silly. She stared blankly at the big cat in front of her. Its sharp claws had scratched her back. Blood was flowing out, and the clothes on her back were wet. The unpleasant smell of wild beasts lingered at the tip of his nose. Big Cat dragged Gu Liang into the depths of the forest. Gu Liang didn't dare to resist. She was afraid that if she resisted, Big Cat would claw her to death. If he didn't struggle, he might be able to live a little longer. The big cat dragged the man into the forest. Its fur bristled. It wanted to give up on the prey, but it was unwilling. Ning Shu appeared in front of the big cat. The big cat was so frightened that it arched its body. Its sharp claws clawed the ground tightly, and it assumed an attacking posture. A threatening growl came from its throat. The more you looked at it, the more it looked like a big cat. Its entire body was emitting a vicious aura. In its round eyes, the pupils were vertical lines. Gu Liang endured the pain and looked at Ning Shu, who had suddenly appeared. Ning Shu was now a child. He didn't have the strength to fight against the big cat at all. She shouted, "Leave quickly. There's danger here." She had seen the outline of the child's figure through the red veil, but he had stuffed a jade pendant into her hand. Although this jade pendant didn't reach her hands in the end and was taken away by someone, Gu Liang felt a trace of warmth in her heart. The other party really thought that she was married and added to her dowry. She couldn't escape. It would be best if she could let this little girl leave. Gu Liang's shout scared the big cat even more. It growled and showed its claws to scratch her body. Immediately, a few deep scratches appeared on her body, and the cat's claws were covered in blood. Ning Shu's expression was a little ugly. It attacked directly in front of her. Although he didn't know why it didn't attack her but chose to attack Gu Liang. It was certain that it bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, she was a child. This big cat could scratch her to death with its claws, but it didn't attack. It was probably more sensitive. Ning Shu walked over in his wedding dress. The big cat grabbed the ground tightly. Its body arched even more, like a bowstring that was pulled to its limit. Ning Shu didn't care about the big cat at all. He reached out to pull the bride to his side. The big cat immediately reached out its claws to grab Ning Shu. However, its claws didn't cause any harm to Ning Shu. Instead, they pierced through Ning Shu's hand. The big cat's pupils constricted. It was obvious that it was very confused by this situation. Its fur stood on end. It let out a terrifying whimper. Ning Shu glanced at the big cat and said to the bride, "Can you still move?" "I can." The bride endured the pain of her wound and crawled to Ning Shu's side. The big cat couldn't cause any harm to Ning Shu. This made Gu Liang feel a little more confident. Ning Shu asked her, "How many people has this big cat eaten?" The lifespan of a cat wasn't very long, but this big cat had probably exceeded the lifespan of an ordinary cat. The bride shook her head. "I don't know." Her expression was a little terrified. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. Ning Shu glanced at the big cat. He smelled the stench on the big cat's body and hesitated. It was too smelly. Would it be very smelly if it was made into a scarf or a cloak? Ning Shu asked, "When did your village start sacrificing?" The bride shook her head. "I don't know. When I was young, I heard that some girls married far away and never returned to their parents' home. It probably started from then." Ning Shu looked at the big cat. This big cat had exceeded the lifespan of an ordinary cat. In other words, it had eaten a lot of people. "Every year?" Ning Shu asked. "I don't know." The bride shook her head. This kind of thing was obviously not something a little girl like her could know. Ning Shu looked at the big cat. She was going to leave at dawn. She was going to go to a bigger town to buy things and get rid of the big cat as soon as possible. The big cat sensed Ning Shu's dangerous gaze and crawled back many steps. Then, it raised its neck like a wolf and let out a wolf-like howl. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. Was the big cat gathering its companions? It was gathering a pack of wolves. The big cat lived with the wolves? Ning Shu stood still and watched the big cat summon the pack of wolves. It was better to kill them all in one go. Otherwise, the pack of wolves would attack the village. Maybe these wolves weren't ordinary wolves. Chapter 4000. This body is already a middle-aged woman. She works all year round and doesn't pay attention to maintenance. Her body has some small pains and itches. It is not uncomfortable, but it makes people feel bad. This house is not big. There are a lot of things piled up, and it looks very cramped. Some corners that are not easy to clean have black dust, which looks even worse. The house is not big. It is piled up, and it feels like the ceiling is about to press down. How can one feel good living in such a house? This is a place where one lives, eats, drinks, and sleeps. How can it be so bad? Ning Shu propped up his body and knocked on Zheng Xian's door. Zheng Xian in the room was wearing headphones and typing on the keyboard, but he couldn't hear the sound of knocking on the door. Ning Shu swept with his spiritual force and knew the situation in the house, and he didn't insist on opening the door. Ning Shu began to clean up the house, the kitchen, and the living room. There are many plastic bags in the kitchen, and some of the bags have turned black. Sun Hongying is very careful in all aspects of life. Even a plastic bag must be kept. Maybe it will be useful in the future, and she is reluctant to use it. An iron box or even a better paper bag would have to be kept. Therefore, there are some things piled up in the house. They seem to be useful, but in fact, they are useless. Some things have even become dirty and decayed. As a result, the originally small house is even more cramped and depressing. Did Sun Hongying do something wrong? No, she just wanted to save. She didn't have the money to mess around. Ning Shu threw away these useless things. It was really not good to waste them at home. Some useless decorations that occupied the place were also thrown away. A big bag of things was thrown away, and the space in the house was a little bigger. Then the next step was to clean. Especially the sanitary blind spots. They are old and dark, and the original appearance of the floor tiles can't be seen. And when cleaning, only the places that can be cleaned, and the places that can't be cleaned are left alone. Ning Shu took a bucket of water, put on plastic gloves, wiped the glass, wiped the table, and cleaned the hood. As long as the living environment is good, it won't be too depressing. There are many people, the environment is crowded, and such messy things affect people's mood. Young Master Qian didn't mind. In fact, he could make these things clean. Ning Shu was so tired that he was sweating profusely. There were too many dirty things in the house. He had to change buckets of water one after another. It wasn't that Sun Hongying didn't want to live a good life, but she was really too tired. She had to work and take care of her family. She had to do everything. She was physically and mentally exhausted. When Zheng Xian came out of the bathroom, he saw Ning Shu lying on the ground and using a brush to clean the dust at the foot of the door. He was stunned. Ning Shu said to him indifferently, "Help me change a basin of water." As for Zheng Xian, Ning Shu didn't feel any resentment towards him. He felt that he had killed so many people, but he didn't feel any sympathy for him, even though he was miserable. Zheng Xian hesitated for a moment, but still helped Ning Shu change the water. He looked around the room and found that it was a lot more spacious. He saw her lying on her stomach and cleaning. He touched his nose and wanted to ask if she needed help. However, when he thought of her parents being called tomorrow, her irritated look of looking at trash made him put an end to this idea. After going to the bathroom, he went back to his room to play games. Ning Shu cleaned the small house. The foggy windows were wiped clean, and the lighting in the house was much better. Moreover, there were no strange things blocking the way, so the lighting was even better. For a moment, there was a bright and clean feeling. The cramped feeling was much better. At least Ning Shu let out a long sigh and felt much better. Ning Shu was dirty all over. She took a shower and started to prepare dinner. Sun Hongying really had too many things to do. 3 meals a day, washing clothes, cleaning, and going to work. Even an Iron Man couldn't bear this. It was hard and tiring. In the end, she still lived a miserable life. Sun Hongying was the portrayal of most housewives. She worked outside and had to do everything at home, including taking care of the children. She took care of everything. This amount of labor was too frightening. Ning Shu made some simple dishes. Furthermore, her culinary skills weren't very good. Seng Jiqiang took the 2 children home. Sun Hongying had 2 children. The eldest daughter was 1 year older than Zheng Xian, and the son was still a primary school student. 3 children. One could imagine how noisy and crowded it was. Seng Jiqiang was an honest and ordinary man. He didn't have any great abilities, nor did he have any crooked thoughts or bad habits. He was ordinary. He was the kind of man that the older generation said could live a good life. Compared to those who had bad habits and gambled with their wives, he was much better. However, he didn't have the ambition that he should have. He always wanted to be safe and wasn't willing to take any risks. He was afraid of losing money in business. He was afraid of not being able to find a job if he changed careers. Although it wasn't to the extent of being miserable with such a person, it was still very suffocating. He didn't dare to buy expensive things and subconsciously bought cheap things. When he encountered expensive things, the first thing he would question was the value of the things. How could this thing be worth this price? It was cheaper than this and so on. Sun Hongying also often said that he didn't earn much. Seng Jiqiang also laughed and said that he should work more overtime. Seng Jiqiang also handed over his salary to Sun Hongying for her to manage. It seemed like the power of the housekeeper, but it was actually very tiring. She had to worry about the livelihood of the family. When she was tired and in a bad mood, she would lose her temper. Everyone in the family would say that her mother's temper was especially bad and she would be blamed. Sun Hongying took care of everything. She was tired, but others would say that she had a bad temper. Seng Jiqiang brought the 2 children home. When he saw the suddenly bright house, he was stunned for a moment. Could it be that he had walked into the wrong house? Ning Shu brought the food to the table. The table was cushioned with a simple tablecloth, covering the modeled table. This table was a little old and the paint was peeling off. To be honest, seeing this kind of thing while eating would affect one's appetite. Seng Tingting sat on the sofa and looked around the house. She said to Ning Shu, "Mom, why are you willing to clean the house today?" Ning Shu looked at the slim and graceful eldest aunt and chuckled. "The house is so dirty. Why don't you clean it?" "How can I bear to clean it?" Sun Inghong had to cook for the children after work. Sometimes she was so tired that she didn't want to move. Thinking of the few mouths waiting for food at home, she still got up to cook. Ning Shu suddenly felt that the decision to cook just now was a rather wrong one. Seng Tingting was scolded by her mother and couldn't help but say, "Mom, your temper is too bad. You must be going through menopause." Ning Shu suddenly smiled and stared at her eldest daughter. I hope that you won't live like me in the future. Who wasn't a little princess when they were young? In the past, Sun Hongying was also someone else's daughter. She lived very comfortably like Tsing Tingting. Chapter 4001. Update fast, free of charge. Even at a distance, the smell of the big cat can be smelled, and after vomiting blood, the wind blows and the smell is even more. It is said that the human body is very smelly, but the big cat's diet is different. Even if it's conscious, Ning Shu feels that he can't stand the smell. Ning Shu pinched his nose and waved to the bride, "Come here and skin it." The bride endured the pain in her body and came over to skin it, but she didn't know where to start and was also vomiting. The alpha wolf whimpered when it saw the big cat die and couldn't beat Ning Shu, so it turned around and ran into the forest. Before leaving, it didn't dare to look at Ning Shu. Instead, it stared at the bride for a while. It seems that it wants to remember the bride in its heart. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. Wolves are very vengeful creatures. In this case, it will definitely not stop until it dies. When it reorganizes itself, it will definitely bring the wolves into the village. Ning Shu released a powerful spiritual force and directly attacked the head of the alpha wolf. It fell to the ground and stopped breathing. The bride felt wronged. Ning Shu said, "I don't know what to do." The danger was lifted, and the bride wanted to ask the villagers to come and help. She really can't do it alone. Ning Shu hummed and lifted the bodies of the alpha wolf and the big cat with his spiritual force and walked towards the village. The bride looked at Ning Shu in horror, but still followed Ning Shu. She had blood on her body, so she couldn't walk fast. The blood on her wedding dress had solidified into black. Ning Shu found it troublesome, so he also lifted her up and walked towards Lotus Village. The first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, and a ray of sunlight shone on the ground. Soon, the whole world was bright. The villagers of Lotus Village began to get busy, as if yesterday's matter of sending off the bride had never happened, and they lived their lives as usual. The bride stopped and looked at the village with smoke curling up. She was very worried and scared, worried about the villagers' attitude towards her and what her relatives thought. However, she still followed Ning Shu into the village. Ning Shu dragging the two animal corpses caused a huge commotion in the village. The village chief heard about it and hurried over. Seeing the soft big cat and wolf, his pupils shrunk. However, his heart immediately surged with ecstasy. With this beast dead, Lotus Village would be completely at peace. This big cat came and went without a trace. It was impossible to detect its presence. Even if it came to the village, it would scratch a person to death and make a mess of the house. Moreover, this beast was very smart and would even destroy crops. He was simply a monster. The village head looked at Ning Shu's fair and tender face and then looked at the bride in her wedding dress. His heart skipped a beat. Although the animal's problem had been solved, the child's problem was still difficult to solve. If she was able to kill this beast, then her methods must be very powerful. What kind of children were these? Ning Shu looked at the village chief and stretched out his hand. "Give it to me." The village head didn't understand what Ning Shu was talking about and asked, "What?" Facing Ning Shu, the village head was already very weak. Ning Shu snorted. "My jade pendant. Give it back to me." The village head still wanted to say something, but Ning Shu immediately said, "I'll give you a chance to reorganize your words. I don't want to hear these words." The other party was strong. The village head smiled and said, "The jade pendant is indeed with me. I'll give it to you later." Ning Shu just snorted and pointed at the bride. "What are you going to do with her?" "She's back. Naturally, she has to go back home and live a good life." The village head was quite a flexible person. No, it was because the disparity in strength was too big. He had no choice but to let it go. Lu Shi covered her mouth with tears and walked to the bride. "Yeah," the bride called out with a pale face. Her current situation was really bad. The village head respectfully said to Ning Shu, "Please come inside to talk." Ning Shu said to the village head, "Find a few people to skin the big cat and wash it clean." The village head immediately said, Of course." He immediately asked a few women to drag the big cat away. The big cat's fur was all black. It was pure black without any other colors. At first glance, it looked a little scary. Among the people, black cats were always more mysterious. The few women also covered their noses. It was really too smelly. The bride looked at Ning Shu helplessly. She didn't dare to trust anyone now. Only by being beside Ning Shu did she feel a little bit of security. Ning Shu said, "You can go back." Lu Shi was very happy. She was crying and laughing at the same time. She had lost and regained her daughter. Lu Shi's husband frowned. He was a poor man. When he saw his daughter, he wasn't very happy. When he saw that the village head was about to leave, he immediately asked, "Village head, what about the promised compensation?" Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. "Compensation?" The village head sighed. "I'll tell you later." Lu Shi's husband didn't get a reply. He insisted that the village head promised a lot of compensation. The bride looked at her father with shock and sadness in her eyes. Obviously, that was what the compensation meant. The village head couldn't wait to break his head. If there was anything, they could talk about it later. What was he doing now? The bride's father was still pestering him. The village head said angrily, "I know. I won't forget about it." Only then did Madame Lu's husband breathe a sigh of relief. The poorer they were, the more they could break through the bottom line of human nature. Because there was nothing they could do, they could only choose to sacrifice. Lu Shi wanted to drag her daughter home. However, the bride would rather endure her injuries than go home. She was really disappointed in her father. Lu Shi's husband said to his daughter, "Okay, go home." "Father, you took the things. You want me to die?" Lu Shi's husband said, "This is your inevitable fate. If you can get some compensation for your family, it would be best." He was very rational. From a rational point of view, crying wouldn't solve the problem at all. It was better to take the compensation and live in Lotus Village. If you disobeyed the village head, you wouldn't have a good life. Moreover, you would offend the whole village. But from an emotional point of view, as the victim, Yaya was very painful. Yaya was a little unable to forgive her father. When the village head returned home, he took out the jade pendant and returned it to Ning Shu. Ning Shu accepted the jade pendant. The village head enunciated every word. "May I ask how you killed that cat demon?" Ning Shu looked at him. "Do you want to know?" The village head quickly shook his head. "I don't want to know. Thank you for getting rid of evil for Lotus Village." Ning Shu didn't say anything. The village head was old and shrewd. He knew that Ning Shu was dissatisfied with them for sending the young girl into the tiger's mouth. In the beginning, he began to talk bitterly and tearfully about the hardships of survival. "My heart is also very painful. I didn't want such a thing to happen, but I was helpless. I could only covet a moment of stability." Ning Shu tilted his head and looked at the old man. "Continue. Village head, are you listening to a book?" He felt that he couldn't continue. 8 Too Small Speak 2, a better experience. The bookshelf synchronized with the computer version. Chapter 4002. Why don't you have the money to move to a more spacious house and we can all live together? Zheng Jiqiang lowered his head and ate, thinking that today's food wasn't good. Zheng Xian held the bank card in his hand and grinned, turning a blind eye to this scene. He had seen this scene many times, and Zheng Jiqiang was always at a disadvantage. In his memory, his parents weren't like this, at least not in front of him. Every time he saw his aunt like this, Zheng Xian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Women were too strange. She talked about money with the poor, but talked about relationships with the rich. Money was probably the poor's Wuji mountain, so heavy that they couldn't turn over. Zheng Xian didn't expect that his wish would come true, and he could leave this place. However, as an underage person, even if he rented a house, he was required to stay in the neighborhood, but he had his own time. It was probably because he was always causing trouble. Even though he was forced to fight back, it made his aunt impatient. Because everyone had something on their minds during the meal, they couldn't really taste the food. The most important thing was to deal with Zheng Xian's parents tomorrow and who to wash the dishes. Anyway, Ning Shu didn't want to wash the dishes. Zheng Jiqiang looked at Ning Shu's indifferent expression and obediently went to wash the dishes. Probably because he received the compensation from his parents, Zheng Xian didn't take it for granted anymore. He hesitated for a moment and said to Ning Shu, "Our teacher wants you to go to school tomorrow." Ning Shu looked up, his expression was a bit harsh. He turned his head and said to Zheng Jiqiang, who had just washed the dishes and was wiping his hands on his apron, "You go." Zheng Jiqiang immediately shook his head, "I have to work tomorrow, I can't go." Ning Shu, "I don't have to work?" Zheng Jiqiang really didn't want to go to school. Previously, he was the one who went to his nephew's parents. In the end, he was scolded by the teacher and couldn't say a word. He said that he would educate his child well, but when he saw his nephew's gloomy and slightly sarcastic gaze, he could only sigh helplessly. This child was also a person with a hard life. In the end, she couldn't harden her heart and lecture him. Even if she did, he probably wouldn't stop. There was really nothing she could do about this child. Ning Shu looked at the terrified Zheng Xian, curled his lips and said to Zheng Xian, "I'll go. However, I don't know what will happen. You know that I have a bad temper." "What would happen?" Zheng Xian thought sarcastically in his heart. It was nothing more than being beaten up in the toilet and then being beaten up by Sun Honging. If his parents didn't go tomorrow, the teacher would probably make him stand outside the classroom for the whole day. "Zheng Xian, just go." Ning Shu nodded and went back to his room to rest. When he walked to the door, he said to Zheng Jiqiang, "Remember to buy breakfast tomorrow morning. I want to sleep in." Zheng Jiqiang was stunned again. "Don't you do it every morning? You say it saves money." There were many people at home. If he bought breakfast, it would cost more than 20 yuan. "Ning Shu, I'm in a bad mood. I don't want to do it. If you have time, you can do it." Every morning, she had to wake up early to make porridge and pancakes. When the whole family was still sleeping, she had to wake up. She really slept later than a dog and woke up earlier than a chicken. It was so tiring. She wouldn't die if she didn't make breakfast for the whole day. Ning Shu really wanted to be lazy. Zheng Jiqiang naturally didn't have any objections. If you want to spend money, then spend money. If you want to save money, then save money. The next morning, Ning Shu was still in bed. Everyone had finished eating. Zheng Xian had been waiting for Ning Shu. In the end, when he saw that he was going to be late, he couldn't help but knock on the door. Ning Shu tidied up. The main reason was that he couldn't find any nice clothes. They were all big and wide or black, white and gray. These kinds of clothes were more resistant to dirt. There were no styles. They were all cheap clothes. Of course, Ning Shu didn't think of using Sun Hongying's savings to buy expensive clothes. She was just borrowing this body and would leave soon. He picked a pair of high-waisted pants, a slightly brighter shirt, and a pair of leather shoes with a little heel. He put on some lipstick. Anyway, he had already tried his best. He carried his bag out of the room and ate some food. Zheng Xian looked at his watch from time to time and urged, "Can you hurry up? We're going to be late." Ning Shu said indifferently, "You're going to class, handing in blank papers, and getting into fights. It's not a big deal to be late." Zheng Xian. Probably because he received the compensation from his parents, Zheng Xian had some positive thoughts about his life. At least, he was like an ordinary student. He was worried about being late for class and anxious about being late for class. After eating, Ning Shu and Zheng Xian went out. It was quite a distance to school, and they had to take the bus. The bus was not like a taxi that could be found just by waving one's hand. Waiting for the bus would waste a lot of time. Zheng Xian was really impatient. He hailed a taxi and said angrily, "I'll pay." Ning Shu shrugged indifferently. Since someone was paying, it would be a waste if he didn't take the taxi. Zheng Xian, that she was too stingy. She was haggling over 10 or 20 yuan. Ning Shu somewhat understood Sun Hongying's thoughts. Money was not easy to come by. Even a yuan had to be spent on something important. 10 or 20 yuan could buy a pound of meat and improve the food at home. Get some meat. Although it was not to the extent that the family could not afford to eat meat, they could still eat more. Ning Shu had been in such a poor situation before. He had to spend every cent in half. However, she had merit and the power of faith. The nature was the same. The taxi stopped directly in front of the school gate. The school gate was already closed. At this time, he was already late. As a student who was late, Zheng Xian's name would be registered in the class. Then his class points would be deducted and he would affect the class to get a red flag. Zheng Xian could have gone to the school gate. However, with his aunt as his guardian, he could not bring his guardian to the school gate. That would be courting death. Zheng Xian went to register obediently. The guard looked at him as if he was looking at a naughty child. There was a parent behind him. Obviously, he had invited another parent. Ning Shu knocked on the door and said to the guard, "My child is taking care of his family. He is late. I came to the school to explain." "What's with that look?" The guard was stunned for a moment. "I see." His gaze was suspicious. After all, he knew some of the troublesome students in the school. He often dealt with these troublesome students and fought with them. He was afraid that they would sneak out of the school. He was afraid that they would fall when they went to the school gate. The guard felt that the school wall should be 10 meters high. That way, no one would be able to climb over it. However, with a 10-meter-high wall, one would not be able to see the outside world. It was not good for the student's mentality. It was too depressing. Chapter 4003. Ning Shu paid for Yaya's medical fees and then began his shopping spree. Behind him, there was a villager carrying things for Ning Shu. Seeing Ning Shu buy things without even blinking, he felt a toothache. Even if it wasn't his own money, seeing him spend money like water made his heart ache. It really hurt. All these years, they might not have been able to earn money in their entire lives. In a short while, it was all spent. Moreover, he specifically picked the most expensive items. It was really too painful. It was even difficult to breathe. After picking out the things, Ning Shu returned to the village. Yaya's face didn't look good. She was extremely pale and her forehead was covered in cold sweat. One look and one could tell that she had a fever. Without antibiotics, this was a big problem. However, Yaya's desire to live was quite strong. After drinking and applying medicine, when she woke up, her fever had already subsided. Ning Shu's people had already left, and so many things that made the villagers jealous had all disappeared without a trace in just one night. Yaya was very disappointed. She had thought that she could still spend some time with her, but now she was gone. Yaya's father asked, "She was so rich. Did she leave anything for you?" One look and one could tell that she was a child of a rich family. Just a little something from her could make their lives better. And it seemed that she had a good relationship with Yaya. Yaya's face became even paler. "She didn't leave anything for me. Why would she leave anything for me? Saving my life is already a huge favor." Yaya's father looked at his daughter with some disappointment. "If you were to follow her, wouldn't your life be better? You missed such a good opportunity." Yaya was speechless. What was the use of saying more? She returned to her room and planned to lie down to absorb. When she touched her pillow, she felt a book. She sat up in shock. This was a book, something that scholars read. How could it appear in her room? Yaya flipped it open. There were no words inside, but very simple pictures of people's movements. Yaya's heart thumped. Her first reaction was that it was left behind by her savior. It seemed that she wanted people to practice the movements of the people in the pictures. If she practiced, would she become as good as her? Would she be able to find her in the future? Yaya's heart was suddenly filled with hope. With a goal to strive for, her future would be different. Enduring the pain in her body, Yaya began to practice according to the instructions in the book. Ning Shu returned to the wooden house and took out his things one by one. An ancient bed with exquisite embroidery, lifelike bed curtains and pillows. All of a sudden, the room became quite comfortable. Ning Shu lay down on the bed and sighed comfortably. It was really comfortable. The Origin King passed by Ning Shu's room. From the corner of his eyes, he saw the difference and retreated to examine it. "Where did you get these things?" These things were obviously not made of ordinary wood. It required a lot of manpower to carve and polish. "Ning Shu, I went out to find some." The Origin King said in a dignified manner, "This king also wants one." To sss clothes to us. The Origin King felt that this little girl was not a qualified subject at all. He had already expressed what he wanted, but the other party was still indifferent. As a subject, what the king wanted, they should offer and do whatever they could to get it. Even if they did not find something else, they should at least give up these things. This was how a qualified subject should be. Did he not want to lose face if he had to state everything clearly? And he had already stated it clearly. The Origin King looked at the indifferent Ning Shu and his eyelids twitched. I'm talking to you. Ning Shu, I know, you want to sleep on a bed, but this is mine. Go find it yourself. You can even sleep on a wooden plank, there's no need to be so particular. The Origin King had always told himself that as a king, sometimes there was no need to lower himself to the level of his subjects. After all, they were so lowly and lived so lowly. Lowering himself to their level would lower himself, but he was still so angry with Ning Shu that he lost all self-consciousness as a subject. Ning Shu, on the other hand, sensed the Origin King's anger and went to find Jin Ji. Jin Ji's expression was a little helpless. Couldn't he just let him rest for a while? Ning Shu asked Jin Ji to build a simple bed for the Origin King and place it in the room. The Origin King looked at the bed silently. If he had not seen the things in Ning Shu's room, it would have been fine, but now that he had seen them, the contrast was very big. Ning Shu patted the rough wooden bed. Go on, it's very comfortable. The Origin King looked at Ning Shu indifferently. Let's change rooms. Ning Shu. Why should I change rooms with you? It's good enough to have a place to shelter you from the wind and rain, yet you want to occupy my room? Who gave you the courage and confidence? I'm giving you a room because you helped me. If you didn't help build this house, you wouldn't even have a room. The Origin King, you? He was so angry that he stuttered. Ning Shu, I'm not your mother, why should I give you good things? If you call me mother, I'll change rooms with you. The Origin King pointed at Ning Shu. You're too insulting. Ning Shu curled his lips. Why don't you say it's insulting when you ask me for things? Call me Origin King, and I'll really be the Void King. What are you thinking? The void is vast and boundless, and you want to unify the void? Just thinking about it makes you happy. The Origin King really couldn't argue with Ning Shu and kicked Ning Shu out of the room. If she continued, he might strangle her to death. So far, he only knew one person. If she died, who would be his guide? In the future, he would slowly let her have the consciousness of a subject. At this time, the Origin King still had the pride of being the Void King. Ning Shu left the room and saw that the barrier of the opposite cave had been removed. Fa Tian should have come out. Ning Shu waited at the entrance of the cave, but Fa Tian didn't come out for a long time. Ning Shu shouted at the door, "Hi, how are you? Why haven't you come out yet?" A rough and hoarse voice sounded. This wasn't Fa Tian's voice, it wasn't the cute voice of a baby. Damn, he grew up so quickly. This voice was clearly the voice of a youth. Could it be that Fa Tian was now a teenager? Ning Shu was a little impatient. He wanted to see a handsome young man. Fa Tian had always looked like a child, so he was a little tired of looking at him. Now that he had become a big child, his appearance must have changed. Ning Shu shouted from the cave, "Come out, why don't you come out?" Fa Tian's voice was very rough. "I don't have any clothes." Ning Shu, "It's okay, as long as it can cover the important parts. Come out, I'll take your measurements and make some clothes for you." The Cannon Fodder Girls counterattack. The Cannon Fodder Girls counterattack. Chapter 4004. She had been slapped in the face for no apparent reason. One could only imagine how angry and wronged she felt. Teacher Li was about to die from anger. Naturally, the teachers beside her also joined in the fight against Ning Shu. This parent, no matter what the situation is, you shouldn't hit someone. Hitting someone in school is setting a bad example for your child. Ning Shu stretched out his arm aggrievedly. She also scratched me and made my arm bleed. She's also at fault. All the teachers. But you were the one who hit first. Ning Shu pursed his lips and said, "My child also resisted and didn't hit first. If he didn't resist, his pants would have been taken off." But she said my child was at fault. If my child is at fault, then Teacher Li is also at fault for scratching me. The teachers, they felt that the logic in this was a dead knot. What the hell was this? Teacher Li's mood, which had just calmed down a little, erupted like a volcano again. You're twisting words and forcing logic. Ning Shu felt even more wronged. He looked as if he had been wronged. How am I twisting words and forcing logic? Teacher, I'm not very educated. It's clearly the same thing. It's right for a teacher to resist, but wrong for my child to resist. Tears welled up in Ning Shu's eyes. You said that my child is antisocial and unsociable. He is antisocial and unsociable, but no one has been hurt because of his antisocial behavior. On the contrary, these people are very sociable. They formed cliques and bullied my child. Teacher, his antisocial behavior isn't a reason for others to hit him. There was a strange logic in this, and that was that Zheng Xian was antisocial and antisocial. Therefore, it was normal for him to be bullied. If he was cheerful and not antisocial, perhaps others wouldn't have bullied him. Looking at the logic in this, it was actually the victim's fault. Teacher Li was rebuked to the point that he was speechless. He was panting heavily and his face turned green. Ning Shu apologized. I'm sorry, Teacher Li. I shouldn't have hit you. But why are you so angry? My child didn't suffer as much as you did when his pants were taken off and his thing was exposed. The knife didn't stab him, so he didn't feel anything. Teacher Li, I've already apologized to you. But look at those students and parents. They don't have any sense of remorse. They don't even know what they did wrong. All they want is to question me. Their child was beaten. You want me to extort medical fees from you. Ning Shu sighed and said, their behavior is the same as me hitting you, teacher, and you scratching my arm until it bleeds. I want medical fees from you. Teacher, if they can stand their ground and ask me for medical fees, can I also ask you for medical fees? Look, it's bloody. It's all scratched by you. Ning Shu raised his arm. There were many bloody marks on it. Teacher Li was a woman, but when she was angry, her strength was not small at all. Zheng Xian recovered from the previous chaotic situation and looked at his aunt. It was quite like his aunt, but he didn't expect that in order to not compensate for the medical expenses, she would actually directly fight with his class teacher. Sometimes, people could be so powerful and courageous for money, but the protectiveness in it made Zheng Xian feel a little numb. Teacher Zhao was so angry that she took a deep breath. She almost couldn't breathe out and was about to faint. Ning Shu quickly patted her back to calm her down. Teacher, you can't drop the ball at this time. We're all waiting for you to make a decision. Teacher Zhao choked twice. Her heart was aching from anger. She glanced at the gloomy Zheng Xian and then looked at the students and parents. The anger in her heart couldn't be extinguished. You can talk about the medical expenses yourselves. Take your children back. There's no class today. Educate your children well. Don't throw everything to the teacher. Teacher Zhao's body went soft. She didn't want to speak at all. The humiliation and anger in her heart was a little similar to Zheng Xian's. But when she thought that this situation was caused by Zheng Xian's guardian, Teacher Zhao was furious. One of the parents was a little anxious. Teacher Li, you won't give the child a demerit, right? His child's grades were considered good. If he was given a demerit, it wouldn't be good. If it was recorded in the file, it would affect the child's future. Teacher Li's face suddenly stiffened. She couldn't breathe. Looking at these parents now, she hated them as much as Zheng Xian's guardian. Their own children didn't teach them well and bullied other students. If they didn't bully Zheng Xian's guardian wouldn't have come to school. She also wouldn't have been beaten by the guardian in front of so many people. In this kind of situation, she would usually punish both sides. In fact, she was biased towards those few children. After all, their grades were still okay. But Zheng Xian was different. He had never passed before. She didn't want to drag down the students' files because of Zheng Xian. But she didn't expect to meet such a rash parent who made the situation like this. Now, they even asked her if she would record it in the student's file. Teacher Li was so angry that she wanted to shout, "Of course it will be recorded in the student's file." But she suppressed her rationality. This wasn't a good thing. Teacher Li was so aggrieved that she wanted to vomit. Seeing the parents leave the office with happy faces, Ning Shu said to Teacher Li, "Teacher Li, I was impulsive at that time. My child was treated like this and was humiliated like this. And you seem to think that my child deserved it, so you were agitated. I'll talk to the child properly when I get back." Teacher Li didn't appreciate it at all. She slapped him and said a few good words. Then, she heard the other party say faintly, "But those children didn't even apologize after hitting him. Zheng Xian, should we change schools? Why do I feel like there's no way to communicate?" Zheng Xian was speechless. Teacher Li's face was ashen. She gasped for breath. Her colleagues in the office sympathized with Teacher Li and hurriedly poured her a glass of water. To be honest, most teachers would smooth things over like this and punish both sides 50 times to resolve the matter. But in reality, it was unfair to the person who was bullied. But how could some things be fair? Ning Shu grabbed Zheng Xian's arm and ran all the way. On the field, she was talking to the students and parents in front of her. Zheng Xian was a little confused about what his aunt wanted to do. To be honest, every time something happened, it was the easiest to resolve it this time. In a situation where his aunt was acting well, it was already very surprising that he wasn't forced to apologize to the other party. Ning Shu felt like Zhang Fei was roaring. "Those in front, stop right there." The parents and students in front were stunned and turned to look at her. Chapter 4005. The Hollow King was also a poor person. As his subject, how could this girl ask for money from him? Did she have any self-awareness as a subject? Being asked for money and not being able to take it out was a terrible feeling. It was embarrassing and had no dignity at all. He came to a world that could be easily destroyed but ended up in such a predicament. The Hollow King's face darkened and he said clearly, "I have no money." Ning Shu frowned. "If you have no money, then you have no money. Why are you shouting so loudly? Are you proud of it?" Ning Shu's mean look was like a wife who despised her useless husband. This made the Hollow King's face turn even uglier. The only thing he could do was to straighten his back and not lose his last bit of dignity. Ning Shu changed his target and looked at Jin Ji, who was chewing. Forget it, this guy only knew how to eat. The Hollow King's face turned even uglier. Why did Jin Ji ask him for money and not this person who kept talking? He was also a newborn and was still a baby. He knew nothing about the outside world and did not consider his emotions and his fragile dignity as a king. Was this something a human would do? Ning Shu looked at the curly black dog. The dog stuck out his tongue and tilted his head. His dark eyes stared at Ning Shu. He looked quite cute, but Ning Shu was unmoved. His heart was filled with money. The dog said, "Why don't I pray for you?" Ning Shu said, "What's the use of praying? Let me be lucky and find money. I am a good kid. If I find money, I will hand it to the police." The dog was speechless. "I have no money either," the dog said directly. Then, he looked like he could do whatever he wanted. Having no money was not a problem at all. If he really could not do it, he could go back to the world of reincarnation to sleep. When he woke up and was bored, he could give some souls some blessings. It was really ugly to make such a big fuss over a little money. Ning Shu planned to find out more about this city. If there was a flea market or an art market, he could get some money by selling some things there. But tonight, they would probably have to sleep in the park. It was night time. What was the most popular thing on a summer evening? It was definitely a barbecue stall. All kinds of midnight snacks and barbecue. As long as it was something edible, it would be a test. Everyone knew that this kind of thing wasn't healthy, but it was delicious. Sometimes you might be healthy, but you might not be happy. It was worth it to do something unhealthy to gain happiness. For example, eating skewers and drinking cold beer. It couldn't get any better. The air near the food stall was filled with a spicy and pungent smell, but it made people drool. In the bustling food stall, everyone was eating with a mouth full of oil, looking happy. When Jin Ji saw this scene, he was completely stunned. He watched in a daze as his feet were nailed to the ground, unable to lift them up. Ning Shu tried to drag him away, but he couldn't. In the end, the Origin King and Ning Shu dragged the statue-like Jin Ji away. To be honest, the Void King was also very hungry when he smelled the fragrance in the air, but his dignity as an emperor did not allow him to say that he wanted to eat it. Even if he wanted to eat it, it should be his subjects who took the initiative to offer it to him. He should be merciful and eat some. After finding a quiet park, Ning Shu threw the soulless Jin Ji on a chair. Jin Ji's eyes were blank, and his gaze was empty. His soul had probably left his body and was squatting around the food stall. The Origin King was very unhappy. Are we going to sleep here tonight? What kind of subject was this? Ning Shu sneered and said harshly, You want to live in a house without money? What kind of dream are you having? The Origin King, Go Z, you are so ugly. As long as he could survive tonight, he would have money tomorrow. Jin Ji had no soul, and he hadn't eaten for so long. What a good for nothing. Go Z looked at the frozen Jin Ji. Get him something to eat. Ning Shu said casually, I don't have money. Go Z. He will have livor mortis tomorrow. Ning Shu, it's okay, just find a place to bury it. The Origin King and Go Z looked at Ning Shu. You are so evil. There was no such thing as night in a big city, and the lights were bright. Ning Shu and the others were lying on a bench in the park, and there was a soulless corpse. What a pitiful group. Ning Shu opened Jin Ji's mouth and stuffed a fruit into it. Jin Ji chewed slowly, and it was like he was defrosted. His soul slowly returned to his body. However, Jin Ji was still in a daze. In the past, he didn't look smart, but now, he was a fool. For the sake of a mouthful of food, they were all possessed. Even at night, there were still people coming to the park. They were in the bushes behind the bench. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. Where did this wild couple come from? They ran into the forest in the middle of the night and weren't afraid of being bitten by mosquitoes. They didn't even have money to get a small room? The Origin King asked softly, What are they doing? Ning Shu, doing indescribable things. The Origin King, what indescribable things? Ning Shu, indescribable. The Origin King, why indescribable? Ning Shu, shut up. He ended the topic forcefully. Ning Shu scanned the area with his mental strength and found that something was wrong. There was a car parked at the entrance of the park. In this situation, the little girl must have gotten into an illegal car in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night, people were weak. There was no sunlight, and all kinds of evil thoughts were born. Ning Shu kicked the dog beside her feet. Go over there and bark a few times to scare that man. If this continued, they wouldn't be able to sleep. There might really be a corpse beside them. The man already had evil thoughts, and he was afraid that the victim would testify against him and call the police. He might as well go all out. In this situation, very few girls survived. Go Z didn't say anything and ran quickly. Soon, there was a rush of dog barking in the forest, mixed with the man's panicked voice. The man's leg was bleeding, and there were deep teeth marks. The man couldn't care less about the woman. Just Go Z alone made it difficult for him to escape. The woman thought that she had no way to escape. Suddenly, a stray dog appeared. She was so moved that her eyes were filled with tears. She thought that she must take this dog home and raise it. The man rolled and crawled away. The feeling of the dog's teeth sinking into his flesh was too scary. He didn't care about anything else and got into the car to escape. The woman was reborn. She sat on the ground weakly. Under the weak yellow light, a dark mass could be seen. Thank you, come home with me, the woman said to Go Z. Go Z twisted his body and ran away. The woman froze for a moment, her expression full of disappointment. Go Z didn't want to go home with her. She opened her bag, took out all the snacks inside, and opened the packaging. The stray dog that smelled it would definitely come to eat. Psst. Chapter 4006. Encouraged by Ning Shu, He Jie was full of energy. I'll work hard. I'm sure I can do it. What He Jie imagined was flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground. It was a different world. He Jie didn't need to worry about money since he was a child, nor did he have anything he wanted to do. He was lazy and had no motivation. Ordinary people worked hard to survive, but He Jie didn't need to. He had plenty of money and could do whatever he wanted. On the contrary, he didn't have anything he wanted to do. Looking at Hejie's excitement, Ning Shu didn't want to discourage him. Whatever. Ning Shu left Wan Li's body and fell to the ground softly. Ning Shu, who became conscious, could see a light blue ball. She said, "Let's leave." Tuan Zi mumbled and was caught by Ning Shu. She pinched it and found that it felt good, like a slime. She pulled it and pinched it flat. Apart from other things, Ning Shu felt that it was good to have such a ball to relieve stress. As for its place, it was a problem. Although Tuan Zi seemed to be very powerful in this world, it was because there was a limit of power in the worldlet and it was invincible here. But when it came to the outside world, its strength was not enough. After Ning Shu and Tuan Zi left this world, there was a flash of light on the island, which dazzled everyone's eyes. They felt that something above their heads disappeared. The sun outside shone down, hot and bright. Soon someone found something unusual. "My phone has a signal." There's a signal. Having a signal meant that they could contact the outside world. Once they contacted the outside world, they would be saved. Great, they were going to be saved. After drifting on the sea for a month and a half, they had been desperate. Now there was a turn and there was a signal. Everyone contacted their families, crying and laughing at the same time. It was good to hear the voices of their relatives. Hejie didn't contact his family. Instead, he carefully put away the peerless martial arts. When he went back, he would start practicing. In the future, he would be able to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. He wanted to go to the outside world and have a look. And the world was so big that he wanted to see it, especially some dangerous and mysterious places. Compared to seeing his relatives, Hejie was more excited about this. There were many children at home, so it didn't matter whether he was there or not. Wan Li, who had fallen down, also woke up. When she saw Hejie, her face changed. She immediately looked down at her clothes to check if they were intact. Hejie, what did she mean by this? However, before she left, she said that he was not allowed to cause trouble for her. Otherwise, Hejie would have cursed out loud. Was he a pervert? Hejie, you're awake? Wan Li nodded and guessed that her other personality might have taken over her body. She left the tent without saying anything. Hearing that she could be saved, Wan Li couldn't help but laugh. No one wanted to die, even if their life wasn't as they wished. The captain boarded the cruise ship immediately and sent out a distress signal. This kind of signal was very strong. The rescue team that received the signal was stunned for a moment. They had been at sea for a long time without any harvest. Now that they received the signal, they still headed towards the direction of the signal. Seeing the island, all the rescue teams had strange expressions on their faces. They had walked back and forth in this place many times, but they had never seen an island. It was as if this island had appeared out of nowhere. Seeing the huge cruise ship, they knew that this was the person they were going to rescue. Seeing the rescue team, everyone burst into enthusiastic cheers. They were saved, they were finally saved. Everyone boarded the rescue ship one by one. No one boarded the cruise ship because it was a cursed cruise ship. Once they boarded, they would die. Not to mention those rich second-generation heirs, even ordinary people were not willing to go up. Not to mention anything else, this cruise ship had become an ominous thing from then on. No one cared about it. The rescue team boarded the cruise ship and carried the corpses back together. The dead were dead, and the living were extremely lucky. On the rescue ship, Wan Li thought about how she had offended Hejie during this period of time. If she went back, Hejie was a rich young master. It would be too easy for him to cause trouble for her. It was better to apologize. Wan Li apologized to Hejie without any psychological burden or hesitation. She was in a disadvantaged position. Why would she care about her pride at this time? Moreover, their job sometimes required them to step on their faces to earn money. Hejie didn't care about Wan Li at all. Okay, don't cause trouble for me. I won't cause trouble for you. He was afraid that Wan Li would cause trouble for him because of their friendship. For the sake of another person, he wouldn't cause trouble for him. Otherwise, he would die without an intact body. Wan Li breathed a sigh of relief. The rescue team returned to the port. The family members who heard the news came one after another. When they saw their loved ones, they all hugged each other and cried bitterly. The family members who had lost their loved ones were naturally sad and angry. They all asked the captain to give them an explanation and call the police to find out who the murderer was. Jie didn't have any family members. The ones who came were his father's employees. Jie wasn't disappointed or angry. He didn't care about everything. He wanted to be a man who could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. He was different from the ordinary people. Oh yeah, they went back to their own homes. The difference was that some people walked back, while some were carried back horizontally. After leaving the world, Ning Shu thought for a while and temporarily put Tuanzi in the unique Kung Fu Sea. She told it. Tuanzi didn't have any opinion, and it wasn't its turn to have any opinion. Tuanzi was very curious about the surroundings. There was no living creature in the sea. Anyway, it couldn't feel it. No creature was good, no creature suffered, so it wouldn't feel pain or pain. Ning Shu told it, "Don't touch the things at the bottom of the sea." Before she left, Ning Shu grabbed the dumpling, stretched it, and rubbed it. She did all sorts of things to relieve her stress. Back in the body, Ning Shu lay on the bed, covered with a thick quilt. She was sweating all over and her back was very itchy. Ning Shu suspected that she had a rash. Otherwise, it would be so itchy. Who was it that covered her with layers upon layers of blankets? When she lifted the blankets, the stench of sweat assaulted her nostrils. Ning Shu exclaimed in surprise. She wanted to beat the person who covered her with the quilt. "You're awake. There are guests at home." Passing by Ning Shu's room, he saw that Ning Shu was awake. His expression was a little fanatical. "Do you know who is here?" Ning Shu didn't care who was here. She disappeared in a flash. She found a place to wash. She couldn't stand it. When she came back, she saw Fa Tian and a man in the living room. Fa Tian said that she wanted to go out for a walk. She clearly told him not to go to Li Wen, but he still went to Li Wen. Li Wen was still the same as before. After so many years, she was still so young. Even her hair hadn't changed. She was really curious about what method Li Wen used to keep herself young forever. She wanted to learn. However, she also kept her youth forever. And it was a reverse growth. Chapter 4007. Gothuzi tilted his head and looked at the woman's hand. He stretched out his paw and placed it in her palm. He could experience life in the human world and live with this woman for a few years to see the warmth and coldness of the human world. The woman was very happy and left the park with Go Zi. Go Zi wanted to stay in this world, but Ning Shu and the others couldn't. Now, this woman wanted to keep Go Zi out of gratitude, but he didn't know how long she could raise him. Of course, Go Zi was an intelligent dog. He wouldn't poop everywhere or bite the sofa. It was relatively easy to raise him. Moreover, Go Zi could help distinguish between good and bad people. He could beat people up in martial arts and kiss, hug, and raise people up in literature. After leaving the small world, Ning Shu brought a bunch of things with him. He gave the bedsheets to the Origin King. The Origin King looked at Ning Shu. Now that the Origin King had a high and mighty look in his eyes, Ning Shu knew what he was thinking. His mind was very simple, so simple that there was only one thing, and that was that all the things should be done by the lowly subjects, and he didn't have to do anything. Ning Shu chuckled. He put his hands on his hips and said to the Origin King, "I think we should have a more profound and forward-looking conversation. In order for everyone to be able to get along harmoniously in the future, this conversation is necessary and indispensable." People had to lower their heads under the eaves. When the Origin King faced Ning Shu, he still felt a little guilty. Ning Shu nodded and pulled a wooden stool to sit down. "You sit down too, don't stand." The Origin King sat down. Ning Shu said, "I hope you understand a few things. First, we are not your lowly subjects. You have not conquered us, so why should we recognize you as king? So don't put on airs in front of us. We are in a cooperative relationship. Second, do your own things. If you don't know how to do them, learn. Your reward is for me to be your guide, but you didn't say that I will be your nanny. If you want me to be your nanny, you have to pay. Of course, even if you pay, I won't be your nanny. Thirdly, I think you should understand your situation and understand this world instead of acting like a king all the time. Nothing is innate. You say that you're the Void King, but that doesn't mean that you're the Void King right now. You might have seen some prophecy and firmly believed it. You might be overthinking things. Even things in the future can change. Ning Shu looked at the Void King. I've said so much, do you understand? The Origin King was silent for a while before replying. In order to not do anything, you can make up a great excuse. Ning Shu nodded. Of course, I'll do my own things. I don't want to do what others should do. Void King, what if I ask you for help? Ning Shu's expression was very resistant. I refuse. I helped you. Will you help me next time? Help is reciprocal. The essence of asking for help is still asking others to do something for you, but you won't return it. What's the difference? The Origin King, there is a difference. At least my attitude is good. I don't care if your attitude is good or not, Ning Shu said directly. I'm not flattered because you have a good attitude. Ning Shu carried the clothes she bought for Fodder and left. The Origin King had no choice. Looking at the large pile of bedding, he had to rely on himself to get it. He said to Jean Ji, who was eating, help me get it. Jean Ji shook her head. I don't want it. Then she ran towards the cave. She didn't know him. Fodder had just come out of seclusion. Ning Shu threw the things into the cave and shouted to An, I bought the clothes. Try them on. There were several bags of clothes in all kinds of styles. An elegant young man would look good in anything. After a while, Fodder came out of the cave. Ning Shu glanced over and was instantly petrified. She was shocked. She stared at Fodder's uneven, dog-like hair and felt terrible. What the hell was this? It was completely different from the handsome young man she had imagined. A hairstyle ruined everything. Ning Shu asked indifferently, didn't you say you could take care of your hair? The result was like this. How cruel was it to destroy someone's expectations? Tian touched his head and said embarrassedly, Sigh, this is the first time I've taken care of it. It will be better in the future. Ning Shu chuckled. Fodder said again, the main point is not my hair. The main point is that my strength has increased greatly. I'm stronger than before. Ning Shu glanced at his hair and coldly said, Oh. Fodder laughed awkwardly. Then he stiffly changed the topic to Jean Ji. His complexion looks much better. He's also much more lively. Previously he looked haggard like a refugee child. But now, it was different, probably because he was full of vitality. Fodder felt that the atmosphere was very suffocating. He said to Ning Shu, if we face Senior Uncle now, we can exchange a few moves with him and force out some of his strength. Ning Shu didn't look at his hair. Senior Uncle is not alone. There is also Sang Liang, whose strength is unknown. These two are like Siamese twins. And there is such a huge organization. Can they disobey whatever Senior Uncle tells them to do? If they couldn't disobey, they would naturally do whatever they were told to do. Although many people in the organization were already looking for other ways out. But as long as Senior Uncle was there, no one could overturn the sky and surpass Senior Uncle. Their strength was obvious. There was no other way. Ning Shu glanced at Fodder's hair again. He clicked his tongue and said, we don't live for revenge. Don't think about Senior Uncle. It doesn't matter. Live a good life and live happily. Revenge is just a matter of pushing the boat along the current. Ning Shu said, but your hair is really ugly. Fodder was speechless. Ning Shu returned to the room. There was still knocking next door. The noise was very loud, mixed with the scolding of Virtual King. Ning Shu couldn't hear anything and didn't go over to ask. He sat cross-legged on the bed and felt the pain of the meridians opening. The small world's belief power from the unique martial arts had opened up Ji Hao's meridians to his neck. Ning Shu didn't expect that the crisscrossing meridians in his body could be reconstructed. He hoped that there would be enough meridians to run a full circle and a dantian. His life would probably be perfect. It was wonderful. The meridians stopped opening up to his ears. However, Ning Shu was very satisfied. He didn't enter the small world to collect the belief power, but there was still a steady stream of belief power, although not much. When the unique martial arts developed better, there would be more and more belief power. If he had nothing to do, he could also enter the small world to collect it. It would be much faster to reconstruct his meridians. Chapter 4008. She was just a stranger, yet he was being nice to a stranger. Was there something wrong with him? So what if she was a girl? He didn't want anything from her and didn't have any other intentions. Why did he have to accommodate her? Zheng Xian didn't have any pity for the weak. He was a weakling himself. Back at home, Sing Jiqiang was watching TV. When he saw them, he said, "You're back. Let's have lunch." Luckily, Sing Jiqiang didn't wait for Ning Shu to come back to cook. Although the taste wasn't good, his attitude was good. At the dining table, Sing Jiqiang hesitated for a while and asked, "How did the school deal with the matter? How much money did they have to pay?" Anyway, the child got into a fight and the medical fees were a problem. Zheng Xian's expression was a little complicated. He didn't say anything and just buried his head in eating. Sing Jiqiang looked at his nephew and thought that he must have lost a lot of money. His heart was throbbing with pain. It wasn't easy to earn money. It was very painful to spend this kind of money. Ning Shu just said, "We didn't pay any money. It was settled peacefully." Those parents were more reasonable. Cough cough. Zheng Xian choked. The rice directly spurted out from his nostrils. He was very uncomfortable and even choked on his tears. How shameless did she have to be to say such things? More reasonable? Ning Shu glanced at Zheng Xian and said to Sing Jiqiang, "More reasonable. This time, they even paid us $2,000. Sing Jiqiang was shocked. Then the other party is really reasonable this time. $2,000 was quite a lot. Zheng Xian was speechless. What was all this? However, Zheng Xian wasn't a talkative person. Sing Jiqiang was relieved that the matter at school was settled. As usual, he encouraged Zheng Xian to put more effort into his studies and strive to get into a good university. Your father is a university student. You're his son. No matter what, you're still a university student. Only then can you be considered as a son inheriting his father's business, right? In the past, Zheng Xian couldn't be bothered to listen. He was holding his brother's compensation money and saying such things. Did he still remember his brother? Now that the bank card was in his hands, the other party still said this. It felt like the other party was really doing it for his own good. Just because the money was in someone else's hands, there would be a special feeling. Zheng Xian looked at his uncle. There were traces of time on his uncle's face. His hair was balding, and he looked like he had been through a lot. He often compared his uncle to his father in his heart. In fact, he somewhat looked down on his uncle. Now that he had calmed down, he nodded and said, "I know, I will work hard." Sing Jiqiang was overjoyed and flattered. After all, when he said this before, his nephew always ignored him. Every time he looked at him with a mocking gaze, he couldn't say anything. His education level was not as high as his younger brothers, and he did not know how to educate them. He would just beat his own children. If they were disobedient, he would just beat them up. But facing this nephew of his, Sing Jiqiang was really at a loss. He didn't know where to start or what to do. Now that the child was listening, that was a good thing. Sing Jiqiang said happily, "Are you going to stay at home or move out?" Zheng Xian glanced at Ning Shu. To be honest, the things that happened at school today had left Zheng Xian with some psychological trauma. Eldest aunt didn't play by the rules. She didn't know what she would do next, which was unexpected. He wanted to leave this place. He would rather be alone and quiet. It was better to endure loneliness than to endure these inexplicable and trivial matters. But he didn't know if he said it out loud, would his aunt? A big slap to his face. It had to be said that he was a little afraid of his aunt. Sing Jiqiang encouraged him, "You are already an adult. Think carefully about what you want to do. As long as you feel good." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. "Why are you looking at me?" Zheng Xian looked away. "Uncle, I want to move out." Sing Jiqiang sighed, looking a little disappointed. "I know you don't want to live here. I will find you a house in this neighborhood in the morning. Find a smaller one. The monthly rent will be lower. We can let you move out, but it must be in this neighborhood. We can take care of you at all times. Zheng Xian nodded. Okay, I got it. Thank you. He was very stiff when he said thank you. What are you thanking me for? Isn't it my duty to take care of you? Also, there is a lot of money in your bank card. Don't lose it and don't spend it extravagantly. Don't be coaxed to spend it all. This is your parents' compensation. It is your parents' lives, Zheng Jiqiang reminded him. It was rare for Zheng Xian to listen to Zheng Jiqiang seriously. He responded a little, unlike before when he completely ignored him. Zheng Jiqiang was also quite fast. He quickly found a one-bedroom apartment. The rent was $800 a month. This was not a big city. If it was in a big city, a one-bedroom apartment like this would cost a few $1,000s a month. Zheng Xian went to take a look at the apartment. It was a little old, but he was satisfied. This neighborhood was relatively old. There had been rumors that it was going to be demolished, but there was no news. Zheng Jiqiang bought a lot of toiletries from the small supermarket and cleaned the apartment thoroughly. He even bought some wallpaper and remodeled the apartment. Zheng Jiqiang pulled Ning Shu over to clean the apartment. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows. I don't want to move. I'm too lazy to move. I'm very tired. I'm his mother. I have to go to school in the morning to settle some things for him, and then I have to clean his apartment in the afternoon. Zheng Jiqiang. We won't be living under the same roof in the future. What's wrong with helping? Ning Shu rolled her eyes. I'm not going. Zheng Jiqiang. He is your nephew. Strictly speaking, we are not related at all. Firstly, we are not related by blood. Secondly, he is your nephew. Even if I am his guardian, I won't gain anything. In the past, when I didn't give him the money, he probably hated me in his heart. Ning Shu said this directly in front of Zheng Xian. She looked at Zheng Xian and asked, Do you think my words are reasonable? I'm not your parents. You shouldn't demand things of me like your parents do, right? Zheng Xian, his aunt's words were getting sharper and sharper, and he couldn't refute her. He just felt uncomfortable. The bank card was with him. He couldn't do anything about it even if he felt uncomfortable. It was his thing. Zheng Xian said, Uncle, let's get a part-time helper then. Zheng Jiqiang looked distressed. A part-time helper is so expensive. You can just do the cleaning yourself. Zheng Xian insisted on hiring a part-time helper. To his surprise, his aunt didn't volunteer to be the helper. He thought that his aunt just wanted some benefits and didn't want to do the cleaning for free. It was his aunt's character to take advantage of others. However, she turned and went back to her room. It seemed like she didn't want to take advantage of others. Chapter 4009. Little Mouse. How could it be related to the missing little mouse? Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Ning Shu froze for a moment. Little mouse. Then he reacted, Are you afraid that Li Wen will come and find trouble with you? Little Haozi died, and in the end, he was resurrected by the heaven-conquering experiment as a joke. Although he was resurrected, he was not implanted with any memories of Li Wen. In a way, he was toying with Li Wen. Li Wen didn't know about this, and Little Rat himself probably didn't know about this. However, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. There would always be a day when the truth would be exposed. Ning Shu shrugged his shoulders. It doesn't matter. There's no need to be on guard. Moreover, Li Wen has no right to blame you for this. So what if he did not implant any memories of you? Tian said, Anyway, this Li Wen is like a friend but not a friend. It's very complicated. If you take a step forward, you might become an enemy. If you take a step back, you might become an unrelated person. Ning Shu stared at the cannons flying in all directions. Under the dazzling light, all sorts of methods were lives taken one after another. Li Wen was still standing steadily on the war chariot. His posture was tall and straight, and he looked proud of the world. He looked at the battlefield coldly. Fragrant Wind was also commanding the battlefield steadily. Ning Shu felt that he would never be a big shot in his life. He did not have the mental fortitude. He could only strengthen his own strength and be a loner. He was not used to dealing with more people. He had to control too many people. He was destined to be a small figure. A person was free. In a group, he had to abide by the rules of the group. There were many restrictions. The battle between the two sides was in a stalemate. Looking at Li Wen, it seemed that he did not intend to retreat. Fragrant wind sent more people, causing the situation to become more and more dangerous. They were like two balls of yarn that were rolled together. It was impossible to pull them apart. They were simply wrapped into a ball. In this kind of situation, no one could back down. If one side retreated, the other side would press the advantage and attack. This was fate. Once something went wrong, they would lose their lives. Another thing that Ning Shu was concerned about was where did Li Wen get so many supplies to support such a huge army? What did Li Wen have that would cause these teams to follow him? Little Mouse's subordinates were all low-level warriors who had no thoughts of their own and could only obey orders. They did whatever they were told to do. They had no thoughts of their own and were easy to control. Even if they were to die, they would not have any doubts or even question authority. However, all living beings with intelligence and thoughts would have thoughts, doubts, and doubts. Ning Shu shared his thoughts with Fa Tian. Fa Tian remained silent for a while before looking at Li Wen on the war chariot. He probably has some special means. They must have used some special means. Whether it was submitting to Li Wen's charisma, making a deal with Li Wen, or Li Wen giving them what they wanted. In short, it was impossible to have such a team without some means. At this time, the Grand Uncle Jun, Sang Liang, and the others did not appear. It seemed that they looked down on Li Wen. Generally speaking, only when the situation was out of control would the Grand Uncle and the others appear. So far, it was still Fragrant Wind who was in command. Mo Ming was watching the battlefield closely and had to respond quickly. Especially when there were more casualties, the battle plan had to be changed immediately. Ning Shu watched until now and wanted to know how strong Li Wen was. Shouldn't this battle be soldier against soldier, general against general? Why was it that only the people below were fighting while Li Wen was just standing there? Unless there was some kind of overwhelming power that the people below could not bear, Li Wen would not make a move. It was the same on the organization's side. If Li Wen made a move first, there would also be overwhelming power. Therefore, the current situation of soldier against soldier was just an appetizer to some extent. What came next was the main course. The organization was a high-speed machine made up of many souls. Once there was a problem, it would react quickly. Okay, don't sleep anymore. Go and solve the problem. Sang Liang woke up the Grand Uncle. He had been waiting for a long time and did not want to wait any longer. He didn't wake up. He just kept sleeping. Sang Liang said, "It's a bit fierce outside." The Grand Uncle sat up and rubbed his forehead. He said expressionlessly, "What's here? Why are there always people fighting?" The Grand Uncle really didn't know what was here. There was no rest from day to night. It made it hard for him to sleep. So we have to deal with those guys who come looking for trouble. Sang Liang said, "If they're beaten down and scared, they won't dare to come and provoke us." Are they acquaintances this time? The Grand Uncle raised his eyebrows. Acquaintances? It's just a group of 2 or 3 children. How can they fight? Sang Liang shook his head. It's not Ning Shu's group, but they have some relationship with Ning Shu? The Grand Uncle got off the stone bed and walked out of the cave. No matter who they were, he would just kill them. Those who came to provoke him, he would kill them no matter how many times he killed them. The atmosphere was getting more and more heated and tense. Many lives were lost in the blink of an eye. They no longer existed. Battles were merciless and cruel, and more lives were thrown into the furnace. The Grand Uncle and Sang Liang came to the battlefield and saw Li Wen on the chariot. The Grand Uncle glanced at Li Wen and retracted his gaze. He asked doubtfully, "Who is this?" Fortunately, Li Wen couldn't hear him. If he understood, he would probably vomit blood. You always thought of him as an enemy, but the other party didn't remember you at all. This feeling was really bloody. Sang Liang thought for a while and said, "It should be the human who directly followed the Silver Rat clan. It seems that he developed a little on his own." The Grand Uncle thought for a while but still couldn't think of such a person. He was too lazy to think about it. Anyway, he just started fighting. Probably because he was suddenly woken up, He didn't wake up and was a little angry. He directly pulled out his black sword, jumped up, and rushed towards Li Wen at an extremely fast speed. Li Wen looked at the Grand Elder. His expression was the same as usual, but his body was immediately covered with armor. Almost in an instant, a thin layer of high-tech armor covered his body. It was as if he had transformed into a cold and ruthless robot. Ning Shu's mouth opened into an O shape. He didn't expect Li Wen to walk the path of technology. However, he remembered that he had once entered a black hole city. The city was full of technological things. It was normal for Li Wen to be able to research things. A sword also appeared in Li Wen's hand. However, this sword was red, like a piece of red-hot iron. Chapter 40:10. Li Wen used his blade to block the Grand Elder's attack. After the contact, the two of them bounced back quickly and attacked each other at a speed that was almost invisible to the naked eye. Ning Shu raised her head and looked at the battle in the air. It was so fast that she was about to get dizzy. One moment here, the next moment there. The battle was so fast that the details couldn't be captured. In any case, the battle would eventually come to an end. As for who had the upper hand and who had the lower hand between the two of them, it was even more impossible to tell. Li Wen's strength was actually able to fight with the senior grand uncle for a long time. Was this his own strength or the power of technology? Regardless of which power it was, Li Wen's strength couldn't be underestimated. The battle above determined the morale of the people below. When the battle above was over, the battle below was more or less decided. However, this was the organization's home ground. It was very easy to mobilize troops, and there were many people. Not only were there many souls in the organization, but there were also many void creatures. To some extent, Li Wen's chances of winning weren't high, and the decision to attack this organization wasn't considered wise. Unless Li Wen had other purposes, he wasn't an impulsive person and wouldn't make a big fuss for a little selfish desire. This purpose was worth Li Wen taking the risk. Did Li Wen notice something? Was there something good here? Did he want to come over and get a share? It was fine if he didn't know or see it. However, now that he saw it and guessed it, his heart was itching. His curiosity was off the charts. Ning Shu didn't expect to get anything good. She just wanted to see some excitement. The battle above was simply a game of displacement. One moment it appeared here, and the next moment it appeared there. It was a dazzling sight to behold. Ning Shu simply stopped watching. Anyway, she couldn't see anything. She just needed to know the result of the battle. Fa Tian rubbed his sore eyes. This kind of battle is too tiring for my eyes. Ning Shu asked, who has the upper hand and who has the lower hand? Fa Tian said, generally speaking, the Grand Elder definitely has the upper hand. However, Li Wen's strength. Geishan narrowed his eyes. His strength is a little unexpected. He seems to have found a path and Tao that belongs to him. Ning Shu tilted his head and rubbed his teeth. Li Wen could be considered a formidable person. Some people were born to be on Rome's side, while others were very far away from Rome and ended up in Rome. Everyone's opportunities were different, but Ning Shu was more satisfied with his. As for Li Wen's opportunity, he was envious but not jealous. Everyone's Tao was different. Once he found his own Tao, he would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Some people needed to spend a lot of time and take many detours to find their own Tao. Ning Shu raised his head and looked at the battle in the sky. It was silent, but it was very terrifying. If he was touched by even the slightest aftershock, he might be crushed to pieces. The battle between the two of them had already formed a special magnetic field. If another person joined in, it would probably explode like a nuclear explosion. Although he didn't know the specific details of the battle between the two, Ning Shu could observe Sang Liang's expression. Sang Liang was undoubtedly worried about the Grand Elder. If the Grand Elder's situation wasn't good, he would be nervous. Ning Shu didn't stare at the battle between the Grand Elder and Li Wen, but at Sang Liang. Sang Liang looked at the battle and noticed Ning Shu's gaze. He glanced at her and then withdrew his gaze. Ning Shu was addicted to staring at Sang Liang's expression. When Sang Liang frowned, Ning Shu could imagine the Grand Elder's situation. When he saw the corner of his mouth twitch, he could imagine that the Grand Elder had the upper hand. Ning Shu was a little curious. What kind of feelings made Sang Liang think for the Grand Elder so wholeheartedly? He worried about the Grand Elder's worries and was happy for the Grand Elder's happiness. Was this responsibility? Was this love? A bright light burst out in the sky, dazzling the eyes. The Grand Elder and Li Wen collided and released a huge force, bouncing the two back. Li Wen steadily stopped on the chariot. The chariot couldn't bear the weight and power of Li Wen and directly fell apart. Li Wen stood on the ground, his feet deeply embedded in the ground. One could see how much power Li Wen had released. The Grand Elder flipped and lightly tapped the ground with his toes, stopping beside Sang Liang. His windbreaker slowly hung down. Looking at his calm appearance, one could see that this battle wasn't easy for Li Wen. The Grand Elder didn't kill Li Wen. With his strength, it was a failure that he couldn't get rid of Li Wen and make Li Wen lose an arm or a leg. This battle should be a draw. Ning Shu held his face. Oh my, when did brother become so powerful? Li Wen stared at the Grand Elder. There was a flash of unwillingness in his eyes, but it disappeared as soon as he touched the corner of his mouth. There was still a long way to go. Li Wen didn't linger. Instead, he directly opened a black hole. When his subordinates saw the black hole, they all rushed into it like a tide. Li Wen had a fake smile on his face. After all his subordinates had entered the black hole, Li Wen turned around and entered the black hole as well. The black hole slowly closed and disappeared without a trace. Ning Shu sighed. Li Wen had completely taken control of the Black Sky high-tech city. And he could come and go freely. Technology was also power, a power close to God. It allowed a weak creature to have a power close to God. The battle ended like this. Both sides had consumed some power and life. As for the meaning of the battle, there was no doubt about it. At least in Ning Shu's opinion, it was meaningless. However, it let people know Li Wen's strength. As for the other functions, only Li Wen himself knew. The little mouse had good sunshine and chose Li Wen from a small world. However, Li Wen wasn't a gentle person. The scene quickly quieted down. Ning Shu and the others, who hadn't been conspicuous before, appeared. The scene was very quiet and awkward. Swish, swish, swish. Tens of thousands of eyes fell on Ning Shu and the others. Ning Shu said, "We're just passing by. You can do whatever you want." After saying that, he ran away, leaving behind a long trail of smoke. Sang Liang asked, "What's his purpose?" The Grand Elder brushed the dust off his windbreaker and didn't care. "Don't worry about his purpose." Sang Liang asked, "Is he very strong?" The Grand Elder said, "No, the turtle's shell is a bit annoying." Interesting. This kind of power has never appeared in the void. The void races had talents, but this kind of technological power didn't. The organization did have it, but it wasn't the main power. It was used to serve communication. Chapter 40:11. A deafening roar rang out, accompanied by a sharp aura. This was an extremely shocking scene. From a distance, the neat formation looked like a piece of black cloth, bringing with it a towering aura that swept through everything. Walking at the front was a huge reptile that was slowly moving. It looked like a lizard, but was much larger than a lizard. Behind it was a war chariot. The war chariot was very simple, not exquisite at all. It looked like a war chariot from ancient times, but it gave off an extremely domineering feeling. There were mottled marks on the war chariot that were very deep. It was unknown how much blood had been spilled, but after the color had changed, it had formed a dark color. Standing on the war chariot was a man in a black robe. He wore a crown with 12 curtains on his head, and a vertical bead curtain covered his face. His figure was not even as big as a lizard's leg, but standing on the war chariot, no one could ignore him. This kind of domineering aura instantly crushed the Origin King who was talking nonsense. This was simply the scene that the Origin King had imagined, standing at the top with a large entourage. The sound of a powerful army, the cold and sharp aura pierced into his pores, causing his hair to stand on end, making him shiver uncontrollably. Ning Shu and Fa Tian looked at the man on the war chariot from afar. This man looked a little familiar. The Origin King let out a breath of turbid air, feeling extremely uncomfortable in his heart. He wished he could pull the person on the war chariot down and stand on it himself. This should have been his. It was perfectly in line with his imagination. His heart was surging, and his internal organs seemed to have been splashed with sparks, crackling and burning, causing him incomparable pain. The Origin King clutched his chest, his face twisted in pain, and suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Ning Shu and Fa Tian both turned to look at the Origin King. The Origin King's vitality seemed to have been sucked away as he smiled bitterly. Ning Shu, he was speechless. Just looking at it made him vomit blood. If such a team came to attack them, wouldn't they be scared to death? They might as well commit suicide. The Origin King's mentality was probably not good to begin with, and after seeing this scene, his spirit was crushed. Ning Shu sneered in his heart. The Void King was not wrong. What was wrong was his inexplicable concept. Juandui's passing, even though they were very far away, was enough to make one's scalp go numb. He couldn't help but hold his breath as the huge flag fluttered in the air. The flag fluttered in the wind, moving forward with an indomitable spirit. Wherever it went, no one would back down. The man on the war chariot didn't even bat an eyelid. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, firm and unshakable like a boulder. He then looked at the King of Void Kings beside him. Ning Shu felt that anyone with eyes would know what to choose. Soon, the group became smaller and smaller, turning into a black dot and disappearing. Ning Shu exhaled and asked Tian, "I think he looks like Li Wen." Tian furrowed his brows and thought for a moment, then said, "He is a mortal with the naked eye, a human from an ordinary small world. His lifespan is limited, and it is not enough for him to live until now." Ning Shu said, "There are many ways to come back to life in the void. Besides, Li Wen is no longer an ordinary creature from a small world." However, Tian was concerned about another thing. Where are they going? And the little mouse is not with him. After Fa Tian realized that this might be an acquaintance, he began to look for the little mouse. If he hadn't seen Li Wen, Tian would have forgotten that he had resurrected a mouse, but now the mouse was nowhere to be found. He might even have died somewhere. The missing person, Hao Zi, might have been killed. He just didn't know where Li Wen and the others were now. The Origin King, who had a heart attack, listened to the discussion between the two and asked, "Do you know the person in the car?" Ning Shu just said, "Maybe an acquaintance." The Origin King looked at Ning Shu in surprise. "You know such a person?" Ning Shu looked at the Origin King strangely. "Who hasn't known each other when they were weak? Then why don't you go up and recognize each other?" "Why should we recognize each other? I already said that we knew each other when we were weak. Why should we go up now?" Awkward conversation? The Origin King was speechless. Ning Shu asked with a sense of responsibility, "Are we going to continue shopping?" Was the Origin King in the mood to go shopping now? Not at all. So Ning Shu returned to the clan. Except for the Origin King who was injured, everyone else returned in good condition. However, after welcoming a wave of magnificent and hot-blooded Juandue, they returned to the clan and saw another group of people standing neatly to welcome their arrival. Ning Shu looked at the fragrant wind man in a military uniform with an indifferent and cold expression. With such a big lineup, Ning Shu was a little flattered. Since they were already here, why did they still bring gifts? Where were the gifts? The fragrant wind man didn't speak, but Emo Ming, who was standing next to him, was quite helpless. He had to be the bad guy. He walked over to Ning Shu and said, "Our organization sincerely invites you to be a guest." Ning Shu looked at Emo Ming. There were many medals in front of him. It seemed that Emo Ming had developed quite well and was already the second person. Ning Shu suddenly had an impulse in his heart, and that was to encourage Emo Ming to get rid of the fragrant wind man and become the first person. The more he thought about it, the more restless he became. Ning Shu's eyes immediately lit up like a light bulb. His eyes moved back and forth between the fragrant wind man and Emo Ming. Seeing Emo Ming like this, Ning Shu suddenly thought of Li Wen, who stood in a war chariot and looked down on the world. With Emo Ming's luck, if he wanted to develop, he could also develop. But as for whether he had the courage of Li Wen, he didn't know. Thinking about it, the difference between Li Wen and Mo Ming wasn't that big. One was an ancient emperor, and the other was a modern family. Although he wasn't as noble as an emperor, his knowledge and the information he received were far more than Li Wen's era. It could be said that he was standing on the shoulders of giants. However, Mo Ming in the organization couldn't develop to the same level as Li Wen. His upper limit was already limited. There was one more step to reach the peak, and that was to get rid of the Fragrant Wind Man and become the #1 boss of the guards. Ning Shu's eyes were shifty. Mo Ming didn't know what she was thinking and repeated what she said before. Ning Shu, you invited me to be a guest? Mo Ming nodded. Yes. Ning Shu looked at the dense team. There were at least 1,000 souls, and all of them were so solid. They were at least at the level of the golden body of merit. These people are also here to invite me. There are so many of them. Who should I accept? Mo Ming's expression cracked, and his tone was very helpless. No, they are only here to escort you. They are not all here to invite you to be a guest. Shan Yu? Did the grand uncle like this kid so much? He didn't even have 2 tails of meat. Chapter 40:12. The Grim Reaper was there to reap lives. Seizing the souls of others was the spokesperson of death. Could it be that they were going to kill the grand uncle? Anyway, they would know once they went over. They were cleaning up the battlefield and counting the losses and deaths of this battle. When a group of pitch-black Netherworld race members appeared like smoke, the alarm sounded again. They had just gone through a battle and were still exhausted. Now, another wave had appeared. Fragrant Wind Guy had a fiery temper. Now that they were here, he had to be patient and deal with them, asking them what was going on. Were the Netherworld race the kind that would answer people's questions? No, they didn't pay attention to Fragrant Wind Guy at all. This made him feel very awkward. They just stood there and didn't say what they were going to do. Fragrant Wind Guy couldn't be bothered with them. Instead, he ordered people to keep an eye on them and started to mobilize the troops in private. He had seen how powerful the Netherworld race was. Physical attacks were useless, and they were very effective against the soul. Fragrant Wind Guy quickly reported this matter. The battle between the Void races had nothing to do with them. Not long after the Grand Uncle laid down, he was woken up again. He opened his sleepy eyes and stared at Sang Liang. He said in a low voice, "Didn't I tell you not to look for me? What is it again? Can't you solve it?" The Netherworld race is stationed outside. Do you think I should inform you about this? The Grand Uncle sat up with one leg bent and one arm on his knee. He frowned. The Netherworld race? What are they doing here? Did they make an appointment today? The Grand Uncle was in a bad mood. This was really annoying. He lay down again. Come find me when the battle starts. Sang Liang pushed the Grand Uncle. If the battle starts, the army's methods are probably useless against the Netherworld race. The Grand Uncle just waved his hand and was too lazy to speak. Sang Liang casually pulled a thin blanket over the Grand Uncle and turned to leave the cave. The Netherworld race appeared here and didn't move again. They didn't take the initiative to attack, as if they were waiting for something. However, Fragrant Wind Guy didn't let down his guard. Who knew why they were here and what their purpose was? Ning Shu and the others were also waiting. The Netherworld race didn't rush to kill people. Obviously, they weren't here to start a fight. That meant that a new race had been born here. However, no one knew what kind of new race had been born, causing the Netherworld race to wait here in unison. Seeing that there was no danger, Ning Shu relaxed a lot and slowly moved towards the Netherworld race. The Netherworld race didn't care about Ning Shu's actions at all. They just stood there motionlessly. Ning Shu found a place to sit down and propped up his chin to observe what happened next. You guys sit down too. It's tiring to stand. Ning Shu patted the seat next to him. Tian sat down and rested his head on Ning Shu's shoulder. After a while, he actually fell asleep and started snoring softly. Ning Shu turned back to look at Tian. Tian was already an elegant young man. From her angle, she could see that Tian had very long eyelashes, a straight and delicate nose, thin lips, and cherry blossom-colored hair. Looking at him like this, Fatian was quite good-looking. He was especially pleasing to the eye. Ning Shu adjusted her shoulders so that Fat Ian could sleep more comfortably. After a long time, Ning Shu yawned. What exactly was going to happen? The shuffling sound became more and more obvious. It wasn't obvious, but it was getting louder and louder. Ning Shu immediately became alert and woke Fatian up. Wake up, wake up. Something happened. Fatian rubbed his eyes. What happened? Ning Shu, it seems like an earthquake. The trembling under their feet became louder and louder. In the end, it became more and more intense. Jean Ji accidentally dropped the fruit and it rolled on the ground. Jean Ji chased after the fruit. In the end, a crack appeared on the ground and the fruit fell into the crack. The crack became bigger and bigger, and a tender green grass leaf drilled out. Then the vine grew bigger and bigger, growing upwards at an extremely fast speed. The vine was still growing, and the sudden situation made everyone very surprised. The grand-uncle also came over after being notified. The grand-uncle looked at the growing vine and snorted. Interesting. A new race is being born beside this almost dried-up sea of law. The birth of a new race would compete for the surrounding energy and vitality. This situation was one disaster after another for the Sea of Law. The grand-uncle's expression was not good. Sometimes, a hero in his twilight years would be like this. The vine grew to the thickness of a person's waist and then stopped growing. Everyone listened to the vine. It was obvious that the Netherworld race's target was the race born from the vine. Ning Shu nodded. It seemed that the Netherworld race's reputation of protecting their young was real. It was probably because the place of birth was special that the Netherworld race came over. A huge flower bloomed on the vine. This flower was as big as a pumpkin. It was snow-white and emitted a fragrance. The fragrance was overwhelming. Ning Shu took a deep breath. There was a sweet smell. Ning Shu suddenly drooled. I feel like eating nectar. Jean Ji, who was beside him, nodded frantically, agreeing with Ning Shu's words. Many of these natural living beings were born from plants and trees. They used this medium to transmit power to the living beings. The flowers slowly withered, and finally, a fruit grew out. The fruit was slowly growing again. It took less than an hour from start to finish. What kind of huge energy was this? The fruit grew bigger and bigger. After it stopped growing, it fell from the tree. The fruit fell to the ground with a thud. At the same time, the grand-uncle and the Netherworld race moved to snatch the fruit. The Netherworld race roared at the grand-uncle. The huge sound wave was so close that the grand-uncle took 2 steps back. The Netherworld race successfully obtained the fruit. Ning Shu didn't join the fight. Under such circumstances, he couldn't snatch it. The Netherworld race hugged the fruit. The fruit's shell was like an eggshell, and cracks began to appear. Then, the fruit split open, revealing a thin and weak baby inside. The baby burst into loud cries. It struggled with its limbs and clenched its fists tightly. With a red face, the Netherworld race hugged the baby and kept coaxing it. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. What kind of race was this? It seemed to be a group favorite. Now, the void seemed to have changed the number of races. There were no longer too many races. Instead, there were only a few. The Netherworld race. The Netherworld race was probably born. The baby bit its fingers and fell into a deep sleep after crying. The Netherworld race coaxed it. Even the Grim Reaper was gentle. The Netherworld race hugged the baby and turned to leave. The grand-uncle didn't manage to snatch the baby, so he gave up. The grand-uncle didn't care much about the baby. If he could snatch it, he would. If he couldn't, he wouldn't. However, the Netherworld race was so good to the baby. This baby probably had a big background. Chapter 4013. Ning Shu's expression explained everything. The Origin King let out a sigh and said, I want to stay and help you. Ning Shu? Ning Shu snorted and said, forget it. The Origin King in this state not only didn't drag them down but even wanted to help them. The Origin King looked at Ning Shu with bloodshot eyes and asked, what do you mean? Are you looking down on me? Ning Shu snorted and asked, who are you scolding? Fatian looked at the Origin King with cold eyes, causing the Origin King to feel a little guilty. Fa Tian said to Ning Shu, "Next time he scolds, just kill him. We don't have time to pay attention to him." Ning Shu nodded and said, "Yes, I can't bear to see him being an idiot." The Origin King, what kind of person was this? If he wanted to recruit people in the future, he must not recruit people like this. Offending his superiors and showing his teeth at the slightest provocation, but in the end, he was still scolding him. Ning Shu took out some fruits to eat and said to Fa Tian, "Let's make something to eat, I want to eat meat." Tian smacked his lips and said, "I also want to eat meat." So Ning Shu and Fa Tian went to the small wooden house and made pots and pans in the small world. Fa Tian went to catch some creatures without intelligence. They were not big, but they had a lot of meat and belonged to the lower end of the void's food chain. Jinji had already given up on eating and was waiting for Ning Shu and Fa Tian to finish cooking. The taste of the food was not very good, but it was rich and filled with a large table of food. Ning Shu felt that the food he made tasted quite good. While eating, the void suddenly said, "Is this the best dinner I've ever had?" Ning Shu directly took a greasy plate and threw it at her face. "Shut up, do you want to be beaten?" The Origin King wiped his face with a handkerchief and said angrily, "There should be a limit to how much you can bully others." Ning Shu said, "This is to teach you how to behave. Don't talk nonsense. If it were someone else, it wouldn't be a slap on the plate. It would make you speechless for life." Void King, "Should I be thanking you?" Ning Shu waved his hand. "You're welcome. I'm a good young man. I like to help others." The Origin King was so angry that he wanted to throw his chopsticks, but under Fa Tian's gaze, he could only grit his teeth, gently put down his chopsticks, and leave. Tian frowned and said, "This person is even less likable than Jinji." She was clearly a creature that had just been born, but her personality had a huge flaw. She couldn't even compare to the pure Jinji. Jinji didn't even have a personality. He was like a blank piece of paper, only having an appetite. As for the Origin King's personality, it was hard to say. After eating, Ning Shu asked Jinji to wash the dishes. Jinji looked at Fa Tian, and Fa Tian said, "You've already eaten. You have something to do." Jinji had no choice but to wash the dishes obediently. After eating, he felt sleepy, so Ning Shu went to sleep. Ning Shu had already decorated Fa Tian's room, so Fa Tian and Jinji shared a room. Ning Shu's consciousness entered the peerless martial art and swam in the sea. Sometimes, he would check on the small worlds at the bottom of the sea. Some small worlds that had just been born might have some problems. Something might have happened during their birth, causing them to die prematurely. Leaving behind wreckage, this kind of wreckage would probably disappear with the passage of time. But how would it disappear? Ning Shu squatted next to the wreckage of the small worlds, squatting and looking, wanting to see how the wreckage would disappear. After watching for a long time, Ning Shu's mental strength saw worms crawling out of the mud in the deep sea. They were the size of a thumb and there weren't many of them. They were shining in the pitch-black deep sea. To be honest, this kind of soft worm wriggling around was a little disgusting. This kind of boneless creature looked a little creepy. Furthermore, Ning Shu didn't know that there were such creatures in the sea. When did this creature appear in the sea? She actually didn't know. These worms that emitted a soft light began to surround the broken world and slowly gnaw on the fragments of the world. Ning Shu suddenly felt that these wriggling worms were much cuter. They could eat the fragments of the world and return the energy to the peerless martial art through excretion. It could be considered a reuse of energy. It was a little like the immune phagocytes in the body, devouring dead cells. In that case, Ning Shu needed to do very little. From the birth of the world to its death, Ning Shu didn't need to interfere. The peerless martial art could resolve it on its own. However, Ning Shu was worried about another thing. The phagocytes might swallow the intact cells. Ning Shu stared at the worms and slowly finished eating a broken world. After eating the broken world, the worms burrowed back into the mud. This time, Ning Shu was relieved. It seemed that these obedient worms knew what they were doing and only knew how to eat broken worlds. Ning Shu was very happy. This meant that he didn't have to pick up fragments all the time. Picking up fragments was tiring and heartbreaking. Ning Shu felt that the peerless martial art was much more intelligent than the average plane's birthplace. At least it knew how to deal with the plane's trash. This was something that Ning Shu didn't see in the other plane's birthplace. Ning Shu left the peerless martial art in satisfaction. His consciousness returned to his body. When he opened his eyes, there were two people sitting next to him. They stared straight at Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. When she was sleeping, did she grind her teeth, fart, or talk in her sleep? Ning Shu sat up expressionlessly. "What are you doing?" Yan said, "Senior uncle and the others are here. They're waiting in the hall." Ning Shu replied with an "oh" and asked casually, "When did you come?" "They've been here for a long time." Ning Shu was a little surprised. They'd been here for a long time, but they'd been waiting here. This was rare, but it meant that it wasn't a good thing. Ning Shu wiped the dirt from the corner of his eyes, washed his face, and then came to a very simple living room. Only two people came this time, Sang Liang and Senior Uncle. Ning Shu really felt that the two of them were wearing the same pair of pants. They were like conjoined twins. Everywhere they went, there were two of them. Who couldn't leave who? Ning Shu felt that it was necessary to deeply analyze the relationship between the two. Ning Shu sat on the main seat without hesitation. He picked up the teacup and drank a mouthful of boiled water. When the boiled water entered his mouth, it was so hot that Ning Shu's face frowned slightly. It rolled around in his mouth twice and quickly suppressed it. "Oh my God, who did this?" Ning Shu looked at Fa Tian. Fa Tian saw that Ning Shu's face was red. He probably guessed it and glanced at Jin Ji. Jin Ji was suddenly noticed by the two of them. She didn't know what was going on and was very confused. However, she was still chewing in her mouth. Ning Shu turned his head. He couldn't hit the child in front of outsiders. He had to give the child self-respect. "Why are you looking for me? Tell me what you have to say. I can't be bothered to listen to your nonsense." He was loyal and righteous, but he acted according to the principles of business. This was the biggest feeling Ning Shu had for Sang Liang and even the entire organization. If there was anything, just say it directly. There was no need to talk about other inexplicable things. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.